Hey everyone, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. This show is about helping you grow as a coach by standing on the shoulders of giants. Each show, you get a different mentor in your ear. The early motivations, the successes, the failures, the tools, the tricks, and the insight into where the industry is going. All of it so you can make your own dent in the world. Remember, success leaves clues. Now, without further ado, on to the show.
Welcome to another episode of the Coach Catalyst podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Whitwer. Today's podcast is a little bit different. Instead of just one guest, we have two. Our first couples podcast with Will and Erin Hurst. Will and Erin are a power couple. You know that old saying of 1 + 1 = 3? This is Will and Erin. Will has a consistent theme throughout his working career, and it can be defined in two simple words: side hustle. Will is by definition a serial entrepreneur. He got his feet wet as an entrepreneur in the auto sales industry and ultimately rose to be one of the top salesmen for General Motors. While still at a sales job, some poor service on a backyard project led him into his first major side hustle, installing and distributing artificial turf. Him and Erin turned that side hustle into a multi-million-dollar venture, which side hustled into a high-performing CrossFit gym, which then turned into another CrossFit gym, which ultimately turned into a mentorship program where they help hundreds of gym owners build sellable gyms through systems. Now, Will may get much of the credit for the business aspect, but none of this is possible without his trusty sidekick, wife, and employee number one in every new venture, Erin. In addition to being the rock behind Will's ideas, Erin's own journey led her deep into the world of nutrition, ultimately graduating from Precision Nutrition's prestigious Level 2 program. Then, after competing in figure competitions and building crazy successful challenges and nutrition coaching programs at their gym, Spark CrossFit, she launched Atomic Nutrition, where she provides a plug-and-play system along with coaching to gym owners who want to replicate her success and create a new revenue stream in their business. So, if you're into business and entrepreneurship, this conversation is definitely for you. First, we dive into how Will and Erin manage their working relationship and personal relationship. Then we dig into the entrepreneurial journey that took them from Arizona to the coast of California and back to Arizona, from selling cars to filling up shipping containers to starting a gym. We talk about the gym they built with the sole purpose to sell it for its full valuation, something that is pretty rare in this industry. And also, we explore where the health and fitness industry is headed and how you can set yourself up for success in the next 5 years. I hope you enjoy this wild conversation. Erin and Will Hurst, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for having us on, Trevor.
Yeah, we're excellent. Thank you.
This is going to be really interesting because we have three people on the podcast, right? And so who's going to talk first? Who's going to talk second? So I'll try and do my best to try and prompt one person or the other as much as we can as we go along. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys today. We've had Erin on a bunch of different times with the nutrition coaching, and we had Will on with some business stuff. And we're going to get into that definitely in depth here today. But first thing I want to start with is you are like a power couple working together every day, and you both are still alive. You both still don't have cuts and bruises from beating each other up every day. So how do you manage a working relationship with your spouse? And let's Erin, let's start with you first, and then Will can chime in.
Oh gosh, well, I would say I think the thing between Will and I is that I think we work in very different zones, right? So we have kind of different skill sets and different ways that I think we approach the world in a lot of ways. So I think that we balance each other out. I think that's probably one of the reasons it's worked really well for us over the last 15 years. That would be what I think. I don't know what Will has to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think definitely a big part of it is, we got married and met in the first place. I was very entrepreneurial to begin with, but, we didn't get together because of business. It was something that after being around each other enough and me starting enough fires, that was pretty much what it was, is me going out and starting fires. I call it, new thing I'm interested in. I'm definitely a serial entrepreneur. I needed help because I would go and do what every business owner does when they don't know what they're doing. I would go start a business, and I would grow it because I'm good at that side of the business of, sales and marketing and all that. And I'm good at fulfillment too, but everybody's only so good up until they like overwhelm themselves. Right. So they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I need help. And like, oh, I really need some help. Who can I ask for help? Oh, my wife. Like, come on, you're going to be employee number one. Right. So like every time it was like, she was employee number one. And she, through that process, we realized she has some really intangible and very valuable skill sets that are unique in their own right. And I think she had that before we even threw her into the fire of our businesses, just a knack for picking these things up and definitely, on her side of the business where she has strengths.
So,
And I should also preface really quick to say that when we met, I was 19 and Will was 23. So, this was 15 years ago. Actually, this Saturday is our 15-year anniversary. And I'd say that I think obviously that's like we've, at least for me, we've grown up together, right? So in terms of like my skill set, I don't think that was really something well honed at the time that we met. I think it's just been something that's been forged through our relationship and working together and learning and growing sort of together.
mm-hmm. So do you guys have a specific structure? Like, do you work in the same room? Do you work in separate rooms? Like, is there anything that you guys have consciously thought about on how to make this work?
Yeah, I think space, I think it comes down to the person, right? For us, I'm definitely someone who needs his space, right? Like I need, like I'm highly extroverted. Like when you meet me, I'm a hugger, and like I have that streak when I'm like when I have to turn it on in person.
Mm-hmm.
But like when I'm working, I'm very introverted. Like I want to like go into the closet and just be me and my computer and a couple of walls. And I don't want a lot of distractions. So I definitely tend to isolate myself to get my best work done. Erin's style is definitely different, so she can tell you about that.
Yeah, I'm just a lot. I am quite the extrovert as well, but I am also extremely social, and I kind of I don't tend to lock myself into something and like not come out of the room. I kind of will do a little and then get up and move around and socialize and do a little. So it's a little bit more my style, is a little bit more, I guess, free to chat. And it drives him nuts. So yeah, we work in different locations, typically speaking. But we also because we have such different roles, and we also have two kids. I would just say that a lot of our work habits have kind of evolved around like what makes sense, right? So the hours we work might be a little bit differently as well, just because obviously we have kids that we have to care for as well. So we kind of just create the balance. I really think it comes down to the communication of like what each other's needs are in terms of on a week by week basis. It looks different sometimes, it's not always the same.
Do you guys have like a meeting every week to just kind of go over, here's what we got going on? Or is it a little more free flowing, like over the dinner table, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So we have date night every Friday night. And I would say date night's a write-off for us because it's pretty much mostly a business conversation.
Yep.
But that's what we love, right? Like we love what we do. And there's that old saying of like, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And I don't ever feel like, we're muddying the waters of our personal relationship because this is what we both love to do. We like the people we serve and how we get to do it and the businesses we built for ourselves. And that was very intentional from the get-go. So, we do enjoy each other's company on a very personal level on date night, but we also like decompress about the week and share, if there were any things that we need to overcome in the future, and if there's anything that's very practical where like, hey, we need to change this, then we probably don't hash that out on date night. We will probably save that for like during business hours, which at this point we've become pretty good at like defining what those hours are, which they kind of are. They're somewhat set, but they do move. Obviously, most entrepreneurs, you don't just work 9 to 5. You know what I mean? Like You're kind of moving and flowing. Some days you can work shorter days, and some days you work longer days. So
yeah, and actually to expand on that and clarify that just a little bit, I think if I think about the type of conversation we have, on date night, for example, I think a lot of it is big picture conversation. I would say that I feel like we have a very clear line drawn between practical, like tactical little things. Like if there's a client that like we need to do something for, or there's like, something that's a bit more in the business kind of stuff. That's not something like if I had a question about a client, I'm not going to ask him about that or bring a conversation about that like after we've sort of closed up for the day, if you will. I'll just hold that conversation for tomorrow during work hours. And it's actually kind of funny because, I might be working through, like, for example, like an order for something, like I'm placing a t-shirt order for an event we're doing. And I had to ask a question about how something looked. And I was like, oh, I'll have to get back to you tomorrow after I get with my boss. I'll like refer to that sometimes because people are going to expect me to come with an answer at like 8:00 at night because they're going to assume that I'm just going to be like, oh, well, it's your husband. Ask him after work. And I'm like, I don't do that. Right. Because there's pretty clear boundaries about little decisions like that. Those kind of stay during work hours.
And Erin, do you think that is just you intuitively being like, this is how I want it? Or did you guys sit down and like, hey, we do this during work hours and we try and stay away from this when we're having family time?
I think I had enough of Will saying, don't ask me about that right now. Ask me tomorrow. Where I just learned that, this is an appropriate conversation for tonight, or it can wait for tomorrow. I think I just learned over time, like when a good time, because when he kind of closes it down, it's like, okay, we're done, but I'm not that way. I would just be like, oh yeah, and by the way, I have this on top of my mind right now. So let me just get it out of the way. And he's not like that. So
yeah. So it's like a learned behavior. Yeah.
Yeah. My brain's definitely a very definitive when it switches gears. I don't have that, I turn it on, I'm all in on one thing. And then when I turn it off, I'm all in. Like if I'm hanging out with the kids, or if it's date night, we aren't really getting into the practical part of business, maybe some high level, like more, we'd like to move more this direction kind of stuff. We always like talking about that stuff because that's the fun part, right? The vision, the direction stuff, you can always talk about that stuff. We feel like sometimes, like when you're dealing with a specific issue with a client, once I've switched off that kind of practical hands in the dirt gear, I don't, and I can be very direct. So Erin made me sound much nicer about it than I probably come off to most people. She, someone listening in from an earshot might be like, wow, that guy was a little direct.
I have thick skin. I have thick skin.
Yeah. It's just understanding each other is what it is, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you've been together for 15 years, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
she can good. Sorry.
I was gonna say 15 years ago, right? You guys meet. Are you running a business, or Erin, are you running a business at this time?
So at the time, it was the last job where I worked for anybody else when we met, but it was I'd say an entrepreneurial role, in that I worked for I worked for a dealership. I was a car salesman, actually. I actually got the awards up there on the wall. I was actually the second or third ranked salesman in all of the Western United States for General Motors. So, General Motors is obviously the largest auto manufacturer in the world. So in the Western half of the United States, I was the third ranked salesman for a couple of years in a row. So like, wasn't the average guy sitting on the lot, trying to take advantage of people. I was building my own book of business within this business. I did that within 4 years and was really successful at it at an age when most of my peers were still going to college. So, for me, that was what I was focused on at the time. Erin can kind of tell what she was doing at the time.
Yeah, I was still finishing my undergrad. So I was full-time in school and also working full-time. I think at the time that we met, I was managing a salon maybe, or I did that. And then I worked for like a company called Altel, which was bought out by Verizon. But that's what I was doing sort of when, I was, I think probably starting my senior year at ASU when Will started our first business. And I think within the first 6 months of that, I had quit my job and was pretty much just entirely at that point, sort of finishing up my undergrad and then helping him with a business. And obviously my role just grew from there in the business.
And was that first business was that the turf company? Was that the first one?
Yeah. Kind of.
He probably had like 20 businesses before that, but that was like the first
one we went all in on, right? Like I had like numerous side hustles. Like while I was working at the dealership and managing $1 million book of business that I built pretty much as my own business within the dealership. A lot of the best salesmen do that, where like they run their own book of business because I can't be a GMC Buick dealer, right? Like I can do it through another dealer. And that's kind of how I operated. This is my book of business that I ran through this dealership. They kept 70% of the profit because it's their business. And they do all the marketing. My job was just to convert leads into sales, right? And so that's what I did.
Trevor, are you
And
on
my
with me
job
still?
was to keep them coming back. Now, while I
No,
was
we're good.
doing that, I had a huge appetite for, what I could do with my energy. So I had like an Amazon store, I had an eBay store, I had numerous like online things. I was always kind of fascinated with the online world and how commerce was moving that direction at a
Mhm.
time when like terms like digital marketer weren't even really coined yet. This is like 2005, 2006.
And so the turf was kind of the first major business that you kind of put a lot of energy in and said, all right, I'm going to stop kind of some of these side hustles and we're going to go all in on this. And was that just kind of a side hustle that grew into something big enough to say, let's go with it? Or was there something else that happened?
Yeah. So interesting turn of events. Yeah. So, it's 2007, right? That's when we bought the house, 2007, right? Like
Mhm.
literally as like the earth is about to, like the economies are about to crash, I buy my first
Right.
house, top of the market, interest rates were like 7.5% at the time. And so bought this house and I was like, okay, well, and then like I was doing good at the time. It hadn't quite hit the bottom yet. It was just being talked about at the time. And we wanted to make this house nice to live in it for a while. It was our first home together. And then, so we brought out this like artificial turf company to like put in, we had this little like patch of grass in the back yard. It was more of a side yard. It was a tiny starter home. And we're like, well, okay, have them put turf here because it's going to be hard to manage real grass here. And we had a dog and we're like, we're going to need some place for this dog to use the restroom, right? And make it look nice and make it green and whatever. And so turf was a thing at the time that was coming on the scene, like this new version of it. It wasn't like grandma's like green carpet anymore. It like looked like
Mhm.
grass. And it had my interest because the only college level courses I took were back when I was in high school. I went to a vocational school where they teach you trades and stuff like that. And I was really
Mhm.
fascinated in landscaping, landscape technologies and things like that. So I took those college level like prep courses for that vocation, and was always interested in the combination of like science and nature and things like that. And the turf thing really had my eye. So I did that. The company came out, did the lawn, charged me like for like a 200 square foot area, like a not even, I think it was like 150 square foot area, really small area of turf, charged me like $3,000 like to do this. But I was like, okay, I guess that's what it goes for. I didn't know any better. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking like, this must be some really expensive stuff. They put it in, I pay it, don't think much about it. Like a week later, this little crazy dog we had at the time decided to like rip a corner of that turf up. Like it doesn't know, it's just digging at it, right? It thinks it's grass. It's digging at it.
Right.
It's, pulls the corner of it up. And I'm like, man, I just paid $3,000 for that. Like I gotta fix this now. Right. So I'm like, well, I don't have the time. I'm, running my book of business out of the dealership and I have my little side hustles. I'm like, I'll just call that company up to have them come back and fix it. Right. So I call them and like, they pay me like no mind. They're like, yeah, we'll let you know when we can come out and fix it. Right. Like classic, like, sell and
Mhm.
then underserve after the sale. Doesn't pay, it's not worth them to come all the way out. We're like 20 miles outside the city in more of a suburban area where they're located and more in the city. There's a number of reasons why I could see it being difficult for them, but they should have it probably wouldn't have resulted in what resulted next, which ultimately impacted
Right.
them at the end of the day, which was I got to thinking like, okay, it was a week ago that in the trash bin still sits the wrapper for that big roll of artificial grass. I'm going to go find that wrapper and find out where it was made. And I'm just going to fix it myself. I wasn't thinking start a business. I go and grab the wrapper. I find the wrapper. It says like something manufacturer. I can't remember what it was. Dalton, Georgia. I'm like, and so I look them up. I Google them. I'm good at Googling. So I go and Google and I find him and I call him and a guy picks up and he's got a Southern voice. He's in Dalton, Georgia. And he's like, so-and-so manufacturer. How can I help you? And I'm like, yeah. So I just had some turf installed here and this company, they came in and installed it and they won't help me. And they're like, yeah, they're a supplier of ours. You have to go through them. And I'm like, yeah, but they're not calling me back. And I'm like, can I just buy a few square feet of turf? And they're like, well, it comes in like certain lengths and sizes or whatever. I'm like, what's the minimum I can buy? And they're like, X. I'm like, okay, cool. What's it cost? And they're like, I'm expecting them to say like $1,500, at least like half the cost of what I paid for the original thing. They're like, oh, you can buy that much for like $100. And I'm like, what? And they're like, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, I'll buy it. And while you're at it, can you send me some samples? Because I want to learn more about this stuff. Right. So this thing that I had interest in prior to landscaping and the combination of the technology of the turf and this, and then hooking up with the manufacturer and seeing what it costs and then realizing the margin that they made on me, I was like, and at the time I was very ripe for like doing something very entrepreneurial that was exciting to me, and this met it all. So anyways, yeah, these guys sent me out some product. Within like a couple months, I had figured out how to run Google ads at the time, which were like it was, again, this is like, now everybody knows Google Ads. At the time, like, it was kind of laughable that you would run ads on the internet. People don't remember that because most people weren't in it. But like, I remember when I started this company, this turf company, and I went to go market it, I exclusively did ads on Google because it was like 5 cents a lead. It was insane what you can get leads for. And me being a millennial and all my competition being older generational people, they didn't understand this is where everybody my age and younger was going to be searching for things at. So I got on there, ran ads, and long story short, I grew this business to like $5 million a year within like a couple of years, mainly on the back of like really, really cheap Google ads. But meanwhile, I was always in there tinkering with it. I just loved the digital marketing space and what that, and tinkering with that at the time. And then, but it was so funny because I remember going to a trade show, one of the first trade shows locally I decided to go to. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll pay to go to one of these trade shows, even though we don't really need to. All my competitors are there, I might as well go. And so you go to there and like you're in the court, you're in the row. If you've ever been to like a home and garden show, they put all the companies that do one thing on one section, they put all the companies that do another thing on another section. We were next to all the other turf companies. And the guys that literally like sold me the original product that underserved me walked by and started snickering stuff at me, right? Like they were like, you know, way to be original, right? And I'm like, well, you should have come out and fixed my lawn. Like, like it would have cost you a day's worth of work and probably a couple $100, and I wouldn't be taking chunks out of your market, because we were eating away the market share. Because all these guys, the thing that they said to me next was like, well, good luck with those Google ads. That's what they said to me, you know, because they were all advertising in like the local home and garden magazine that used to go out to everybody. They were all advertising in the classified sections. Yellow pages. That's like, people think 2005, they think like, now we're looking back, like that wasn't that long ago, but that was like a whole different generation of advertising still. That was kind of like right as the recession hit when it all changed. And so, yeah. So anyways, I remember laughing. I didn't say anything back. Like, we're kicking your butt with these Google ads. I just kind of turned away. I was like, okay, have a good day. You know, like, and meanwhile, like a lot of those companies struggled through the recession the next couple of years. We actually grew through the recession because we had no competition in the online marketing space.
Yeah. At some point they were all going out of business, and we're like, cool, we'll buy your trailers. We'll buy we were just buying up all their cheap equipment for like pennies on the dollar because they're going out of business and we're growing exponentially. Yeah,
that's exactly what happened. I remember we bought, like trucks right now, right? You can't buy a truck that runs for less than like $50K right now. We were buying like F350 diesel with like a, landscape bed on it. It would be $100,000 truck. I remember paying like $15K for one. Like, it was recession, right? They were it was like fire sale. Everybody was liquidating everything. Right. So we not only had like crazy low startup costs and growth costs, but we were also had huge margins on what we were spending for marketing.
Did you have a team then that was installing, or were you kind of, sales all the way through install?
Yeah, at the start, it was originally me doing everything, like the first couple of jobs. So, all this kind of happened as, the one thing I left out is the recession officially kind of hit as this all took place, right? And like, it was almost like within a month's time, my book of business that I built at the dealership over a couple of years, like the volume of what it was cranking out in income for me and revenue for the dealership was cut in half. Wow. Pretty fast. So I was like, if I'm going to, take the leap and go all in on something, now's the time. And I think I got a great product here that I believe in. And I think we can do a better job than what the current people in the market are doing, obviously. And so we entered the space, had good product market fit. And then, so originally it was me, like, I'm going to go sell because I knew how to sell, right? And I literally took like how I learned how to sell cars to people and applied it to, this. And when I say that, like, people think selling cars, people for some reason always still attach this grease to it. That's the guys that sat in a lot that didn't make any money that do that stuff, right? Those are the guys that are desperate. They'll take advantage of people. Me, I sold people cars because like people liked me and people trusted me, and they would buy one car and then they would tell all their friends. If they liked the GMC truck I just sold them, 5 of their buddies would show up to buy a GMC truck because they knew they could trust Will, and then they would buy another one 2 years later, right? Like, so we built a book of business on like just really taking good care of the customer and creating. I like to say it's like, you don't sell anybody. The best salesmen don't sell anybody anything. What they do is they create an environment that makes people feel like buying, right? Apple doesn't sell you anything. You just want to buy their stuff, even though like you are definitely being sold. You just don't feel like it, right? Because you want to feel like you're making the choice to buy, right? So anyways, I kind of took the frameworks of what I learned doing that, took it on the road to sell jobs. So I would like sell the job one day and then like order the product, and 4 days later be at the job, like installing it with like, a guy I picked up on the corner or whatever. Like, hey, can you shovel dirt? Okay, come with me, jump in the back. We're going to go shovel some dirt, right? And obviously at the beginning that worked because I needed to make all the cash flow I could to replace my income.
Right.
So I needed that money, but it didn't take long because we were making pretty good margin per job. So within like a few months, I started looking for like, who can I sub out these jobs to, and find, and then obviously because the market was being flattened by the recession, there's a lot of people, talented people that are willing to work for a very little amount of money, or at least at competitive rates. And we happened to make some good connects in that regard. We definitely kissed a few frogs before we found our princes in regards to who we were going to sub to. It's just like,
Right.
if you own a gym and we're hiring coaches, you might hire some
Right.
coaches along the way that like maybe are non-fits along the way, but eventually once you find your people you can lean on, you give them autonomy. And we did that. So we did build, we had up to, I think, 3 crews at one point working at once, installing jobs in different parts of the Phoenix Valley all on the same day. And then we also had 2 different salesmen out selling jobs. And my job was primarily just generate leads for them. Just generate leads, make sure they're getting a steady flow of leads coming in at all times. And then we have traffic. And as long as I could feed that machine, it was just generating revenue, 10, 20, 30K days were not abnormal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll say too, like to kind of piggyback on some of what he says, because, I think this is like an important component. It's that I don't think I will ever meet anybody who will outwork Will. And I think that's a lot of times why, certain people see success and others don't, is because to some degree, how hard are you willing to work? And I remember like he would be up at 4:00 in the morning to go and install a job, because here in Arizona, you get the jobs installed and you're done by 10 or 11 a.m. because it's so hot. Right.
Right.
So he'd be up at 4 a.m. That's when they'd start their installs. He'd go and, pick up the materials and the dirt and get everything over to the location and install. And then he'd come home, shower, and he'd then be out by like noon on appointments selling. And he, of course, like a lot of times people are, he's going to be selling to your older folks who are home all day, right? Retired during the day. And then all of your younger demographic who are, working their 9 to 5s all the way up through like about 8 p.m. And then he'd be home and he'd shower again, we'd eat, and then he'd go to bed and he'd be right back up at 4 a.m. And in between, he's over there working on his computer. And I don't think you'll ever meet anybody that will outwork him. And I'll also make a funny note. He said he was good at Google. And I think he understated that. Like being good at Google, I think is an actual art. And, he's incredibly good at Google. I don't even know how else to say, like, he has a particular skill, and part of that skill is Google. I don't know what he does, but he's a Google magician.
I'm a good hacker. I'll figure out how to take it apart and put it back together, no matter what it is, with Google's help.
It's crazy. Google is a skill.
So, I mean, was that challenging? I mean, we'll kind of get back to the relationship piece. Was that challenging for the relationship with one person maybe spending a lot of time? We don't necessarily call it career, but like entrepreneurial stuff that just takes away. Like most entrepreneurs, like they don't always have the best relationships, right? Because they're so focused on this build thing that they almost kind of forget about maybe relationships and things in their life. And so was that a trying time, or Erin, were you able to,
Yeah. So I actually would say, so I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad, my stepdad, who's my mom and my stepdad have been together since I was 3. So, for most of my life, I've grown up in this entrepreneurial world. Right. And he's a real estate broker and into some other real entrepreneurship as well. But it wasn't abnormal for us to be sitting at dinner and for him to get up and take a phone call in the middle of dinner, because his business relied on being quick. And, when he's making deals and, real estate deals a lot of times go into the evenings, right? It's not something that ends at 5 p.m., right? Deals are made and broke between, the hours of 5 and 10 p.m. on whether or not your deal's getting accepted. So it wasn't abnormal for him to get up and take a call in the middle of dinner. I wasn't offended by that. So like if Will, had somebody when he was, for example, at the dealership still, if he had somebody calling him, while we're sitting down eating, wanting to come down and buy a car, like he's going to get up and go. And I'm like, go, like, that's you know what I mean? Like that's our livelihood. Like you get up and you go, you work when the getting's good. So I think for me, I just grew up around that. So it wasn't, I guess I was accustomed to it in a lot of ways. So I don't think it's ever been overly challenging on our relationship to that, from that side. I don't know. Will can expand on that if he wants.
Yeah. I mean, Erin, God bless her soul. No, I mean, I looking back, yeah, I mean, who, as an entrepreneur, who you are with in life will quite literally make or break, I mean, some people can trudge through it, right? If they're in a relationship where, I shouldn't say trudge through it. Well, I guess it kind of is from on behalf of the entrepreneurial side of the relationship. They could be trudging through it if their significant other is maybe of a more, I guess, what would you say? This day and age, it's, a lot of people look down on it. Like if you can't turn it off after work hours, and for most people, work hours mean 9 to 5, right? So, if you look at the dating pool, and a lot of it comes from where, who are they raised by, right? If they're raised by, if you meet a girl, if you're a young guy and you meet a girl, odds are her dad probably worked a 9 to 5 and, was home. And, there was that, what they call work-life balance, which is definitely, who knows what if that's even really a thing, right? We can get into that whole thing of what work-life balance means, right? I don't know. But for us, I mean, it was always very fluid. And I would say, looking back on it, and it sounded like Erin probably has the same sentiment, that it never really was that challenging for us because, for every time I got up at, 7 p.m. during dinner to go answer a phone call and completely miss out on the back half of a dinner that she made, because that's what she wanted to do for me that day. And, there was also like entire weeks that we were just like, once we had the business up and going, we're just like, hey, we're going to go, we're going to go to San Diego for the weekend, or we're going to go on a trip because we have our schedule clear this week. Right. So that's work-life balance, right? To me, is like, you make the sacrifices when they're necessary so you can, really, live it up when you get on the other side of that. Right. Whereas other people want to kind of balance it in the minutia of day to day. And that's an expectation a lot of people have in relationships of the other person. And it's not just male or female anymore, right? There's plenty of females that are entrepreneur where the husband wants her to be home at certain hours, right? And that's not going to work for her either. So it's not just the men. And I used to speak to just the men because it was more of an entrepreneurial thing for men to do. But these days it's just as much one half of the other. And really both have to kind of understand what they're getting into in regards to that.
I think a lot of it comes down to expectations and communication. Again, as I think any marriage does, but especially when you work together and when you're in these entrepreneur endeavors, like expectations and understanding each other's expectations is important. I know, like when jumping way ahead here, and we'll come back to the point because it's all still relevant, but I was 3 months postpartum with our second kid, and he calls me and he's like, hey, I want to do this thing, but if I do this thing, it's definitely going to take away, some of my time from being able to contribute in other places. And, there's going to be a lot more work and pressure on you to carry other load while I'm, doing this thing, kind of opening that communication. So we understand the expectations going into something, what each other can, like, if he's going to take something on that will change our set of expectations, or if I'm going to take something on that will change our current set of expectations from each other, that's a conversation and a sort of getting onto the same page to make sure we both understand like what we can expect out of each other. And I think early on, that's something that Will's always been really good at, and something I feel like I've always understood to a pretty fine degree. I also see like that whenever he does put extra time into something, or whenever there's more sort of load pushed onto my plate for a period of time, there's almost always a payoff for that. Right. So, I might, for lack of a better term, sacrifice. I don't really feel like any of my life is a sacrifice, but I might have to carry a heavier load for a period of time, but there seems to always be a payoff. I mean, when we were working really hard and he's getting up in the middle of dinner, like you said, we were also spending an entire month in Thailand because now we've paved the way to where we can have this business that we can run completely remote. And now, but that was all for wasn't for a lack of like this long-term effort building up to that. Right. I guess I just always see that.
It sounds like it's just kind of like work hard, but then play hard. It's not just build at all costs and keep building bigger just to get bigger. It's kind of like, we're building this thing, but this thing is also going to support what we want as well, which is if we want to take a month off, cool, it can support that. And I mean, is that am I inaccurate there, or do you feel like that's the case?
Yeah, that's absolutely, definitely. I mean, it's I mean, I don't know if when you're doing the right thing and this is what you need to be doing, the opportunity is good. Like right now we've got traffic coming in. It's like a lot of people always want to moderate everything. They want to moderate the downside, and at the same time they want to moderate the upside, because the upside, taking advantage of the upside, is something requires you to lean into it, right? Like things are going really good right now. We have more traffic, more leads than we can handle. but we're just going to, let's just take it easy through this time, right? That's what people do, right? That's what most people do, is they're like, well, let's just take what we can and let's not really get uncomfortable here, because they assume it's always going to be that way, right? Like they assume it's going to always be that way. Whereas like, no, like there's going to be a down season. There's going to be inevitably in business, something will throw a curveball at you, right? And if you don't oversell and overextend yourself a little bit when the opportunity is there to take advantage of that, like really squeeze that lemon hard, then like when the downside hits, there's not really an ability to moderate the downside, right? It can tumble and just keep tumbling. And meanwhile, because you didn't take advantage of the upside as much, like and didn't take those outsized returns that you could have had, you kind of end up just, success will moderate itself if left to its own devices, I guess is a good way of putting it, right? Like, so you really have to consciously make the effort to get after it. And for us, these times of like, again, I love how Erin corrected herself. Like, we're big on language patterns in our house. Like, I'm a big language patterns guy, where like the word sacrifice isn't even the right word, right? Because if I use the word sacrifice now with all of you, I'm kind of saying that back to myself, that we made a sacrifice, and that will cause me to misframe the things in the future, and we have to do this again. So I don't even use that word sacrifice, because there was never a time where we're like, really, I mean, we're talking about making money here. Like, It's not like we're talking about like throwing myself in front of a bullet. Like, that's sacrifice. You know what I mean? Like, not like choosing to work a little bit harder because we have the opportunity to make more money and set ourselves up to get through harder times, right? I don't know if I got off track there with that, but I really want to make that point.
Yeah, I think that's good. So, I mean, you're not running the turf company now, right? So what was it kind of that entrepreneurial thing where, hey, we've been doing this for 5 years or however long you were doing it, and I'm getting that itch to try and build something new? Or what was the next transition?
I'll tell that one, dear? Yeah?
Yeah, you can tell that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that, first legit real business, and I shouldn't, again, language patterns, my businesses prior to that were legit too. They just weren't at scale, right? So like, this is the first business we took to like some sort of scale where we realized like, okay, cool, every dollar we spend makes us 5. So we're going to spend 10, and then we're going to spend 100, then we're going to spend 100,000, right? And we scaled up, and I was pretty young at the time. This is like, 24, 25, 26, really young. I would say relatively naive in regards to like what business as a whole holistically was. And because I only was coming from like this marketing and sales side of things, and I was just thought, like everybody does, that like business is just selling and marketing more stuff, right? We'll figure it out later how we're going to serve all these clients. So we definitely being good at one half of that, and we were really good at the fulfillment side. We never underserved a client, but it started to really burn us out because we didn't continue to scale the operational and the fulfillment side of the business to match what we were doing on the sales and marketing side of the business, right? So we were constantly overwhelming like everybody on the team, including ourselves, because ultimately once you overwhelm your team, everything rolls downhill to you, and you're kind of left picking up the pieces and filling in the voids in the organizational flow chart. So like having this experience young and getting paid well to do it while we made mistakes was awesome, because we burnt out and eventually just decided like, there's other opportunities available to us, being successful in that realm, and had opened up some other doorways. Go ahead.
Can I jump in? I know he hates when I interrupt him. I'm sorry. Can I jump in though?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I will say, okay, don't worry. I'm going to compliment you again. So it'll make you feel better about the fact that I interrupted you. So basically, Will's also really good at seeing little opportunities as they present themselves. And, one of the things we didn't talk about was before he even started the turf company, he used to, I think actually maybe he did talk about how he used to sell things on Amazon. And so part of selling things on Amazon, he got into like what's, pretty well known now of like drop shipping, right? Where you can order things off of like these websites like DHgate and Alibaba and stuff like that. Those were not like, known sites back then, right? But like you can import stuff from like China and then sell it on like eBay and Amazon. That was something he did prior to getting into the turf company while he was still working at the dealership. And then naturally, when we were, at the sort of peak of our turf company, we were importing product, right? And so when you start importing product, like, I'll let Will take it from here on how the transition really happened between businesses. Yeah, we got burnt out, but there was sort of a connection between the turf business and our next sort of venture. So I'll let him go and connect the pieces from there. I just wanted to fill in those gaps.
As a gym owner, Coach Catalyst is the key to having low turnover. For several years, I struggled and spent 10 to 20 hours a week communicating with clients via phone calls, Facebook Messenger, email, and text messages. I had tried everything to make my life more efficient. I was at my wit's end. And then I found Coach Catalyst. Since starting the software, I have found a life again, and my clients are thanking me for being so involved in their fitness life. I've cut my daily commitment to interacting with over 300 clients to under 15 minutes a day and have streamlined my 6-week challenges. I couldn't recommend it more. I just don't know if I would even be here today if it wasn't for Coach Catalyst. If you don't have an account already, you're missing out and not helping the people you could be.
Oh yeah. No, there is. I mean, definitely a big part of, and to pick up where she's leaving off, the importing of the goods I did prior, I got to learn about logistics, right? Because drop shipping, over the last decade, there's all kinds of drop shipping gurus out there that'll teach you how to start a drop shipping store. But this was 6 years before anybody, if I would have said drop shipping to someone, I don't think that was a term at the time. I don't know. Maybe it was.
Amazon was where people bought books for school. Amazon was a book stealer at that time. If you recall, Amazon wasn't what Amazon is today. eBay was what Amazon is today. But
eBay was the bigger marketplace. We sold more on eBay, and we
Amazon was just for where you buy books, right?
Yeah. So we would bring in, I got to learn about logistics of bringing stuff in overseas and getting a container and filling that full of stuff and how to do that efficiently and all that. Never thought I was just thinking in the short term, how can I make money? But I also thought it might be a useful skill. And I thought it would be a fun challenge to figure that out because it seemed like at the time, only bigger businesses knew how to do that kind of thing. So I was like, well, I bet I can figure that out, right? That's just me. And so I did.
Google.
Really good at Googling. I figured out how to do that. And then with the turf company, as we got to the peak of the turf company, we were selling almost exclusively American-made product. But at the time, we were one of the bigger distributors here in the Southwest of artificial grass. And we started getting reached out to by companies from China. China was actually subsidizing product over, and tariffs were really low, and cost of goods was really low. And so they said, hey, let us send you some product, a lot of product, for free, and let's see how you like it, right? So I was like, I'll take free product and go make a margin on it. Sure. So we started to introduce that into our product lineup at the time, and it more than doubled our profits and I'm all about made in America, right? But we are in a global economy these days. And if, the margins are there and the product's equivalent, we're going to offer that, right? And we're going to be transparent about that and say hey, this is a product here at a lower cost that you can get from this place. Or if you want American made, we also offer this over here. So we give our clients that choice. I would say it was 50-50, and that half the time they would take the Chinese product because the cost was good and the quality was good. But anyways, we would fill these container ships up with these. The product went well for us, so we started ordering product from them. They're like, we're going to give you a huge line of credit. They really wanted to just get the product in our hands and try to eat up market share here in the States. So we started filling up these container ships full of the product. And a container ship, if anybody has seen one, they're 40 feet long. That's a standard size container ship. They're 40 feet long. There's also what are called half containers, which are 20 feet. We started with half containers and then eventually went to full containers. But no matter which one you started with, so we got to do some math here to draw this picture. So a roll of artificial grass was 15 feet long. And in the end of, so if you have a 20-foot container, a half container, that means you had 5 feet left at the end of the container to fill with whatever you wanted. And if you had a full container, it was 40 feet long and you could fit 2 rolls of turf in. 15 and 15 equals 30, left 10 feet at the end, right? Everybody's with me? Okay, cool. And then the container goes up, 9 feet, 10 feet, and it's 10 feet wide or whatever it is. And so you have all that cubic footage you can fit stuff in. And at the time, I kind of went back to those roots of importing stuff from dropshipping. I'm like, I really got into CrossFit. So I really got into CrossFit back in 2009. And this is about 2011, I'm importing stuff from there. I'm like, and I noticed this CrossFit thing is taking off. And I'm like, well, maybe, how can I get a piece of this? I can't do anything without turning it into a business, right? So I'm like, how can I get a piece of this? I saw Rogue Fitness was really the only player in the fitness space at the time supporting CrossFit gyms. I'm like, maybe I can be the discount version of Rogue Fitness, and we sell the imported Chinese, definitely lower cost, not trying to compete with Rogue, more be a low cost offering. And if I scan the goods good, if I scan the product well enough, we could bring in some good quality product from China that will hold up, not stuff that's going to break. And so to trial that, we did the same thing where I contacted some manufacturers at the time over there in China that produced barbells, kettlebells, dumbbells, all the things that you use in a CrossFit gym. And I was like, I'm already paying for the container ships, right? So here's where it makes sense, right? It's normally half your cost of importing stuff from China would be the shipping to get it here, right? And I was looking at what I could buy the product for, which a kettlebell that might cost you $100 here in the US, the cost on it to get it from China would be like $22. So I was like, oh man, I already have I don't have to pay the other $30 to get it here because I already have containers coming over. So I just started filling the end of containers with random product, built a website for like, for e-com to sell some of the barbells and stuff. Had a little success with it, but never really fully got into it because I just really wasn't as into the e-com thing. And it's a different style of marketing and promotion. And also at the same time, I think some other people had the idea. So it got really competitive. But anyways, I kind of abandoned it. But meanwhile, I had in the corner of the warehouse enough product to start like 3 CrossFit gyms. Like, so I don't know if I should keep going or if you want to, tell you how that kind of evolved into what I'm doing now. But that's, I'll pause there, Trevor, because I know you might have some questions or whatever.
So, I mean, for a container ship, you just pay for the container. You don't pay for how much it weighs, right? It's just a container.
You pay per container, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And you guys were living in California too at the time. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we started the company in Arizona because we had so much success here in Arizona. It made sense for us to go like multi-state and eat up market share in California because we were still recovering from the recession. And as long as we were recovering from the recession, that meant there was opportunity, right? Because that when recessions happen, it flattens markets, it opens up markets. And if you can get into those markets while it's down and get your piece of the market as the market comes back to you, then you grow, right? Like versus like in a competitive market, it's really hard to get your piece because like it's very competitive, when things are at the peak.
And also it made a lot of sense for us to go to California and in the sort of that area, because when you're bringing in a lot of container ships, the storage fees to hold those containers are incredibly expensive. So it actually was less expensive for us to get a 13,000 square foot warehouse in Fullerton than it was to sit there with, storage fees from these container ships. So it made sense for us to go and get our own warehouse there. And now we've got warehouse with product that we can stick in here. And now, cool, we can sell to other local suppliers as more of like a distributor of product rather than just an installer of product. So
yeah, it was kind of like we had the logistics companies. If you don't get all your product to your warehouse to warehouse it yourself, and we had a maybe 5,000 square foot warehouse here in Arizona, it couldn't hold all the product we were turning. So we would pay to like have it sit on the docks in a logistics warehouse. You're paying like for shelf space. And after you had enough of it, like we were paying like something like 20, 30K a month in logistics fees just for product we were just trying to get over to Arizona. And then we had to pay fees to ship it from that warehouse into our Arizona warehouse when we need to backfill the warehouse, right? So we're like, I started adding logistics fees. I'm like, well, what's rent along the coast in California, right? And it was like, oh, I can rent a huge warehouse for like half the cost of these logistics fees. So we went over there, found a space, and rented a space. And while we were there, we could also, with that same difference of that margin, that delta we had created, pay our own rent to live there. So we went and got like a lower level duplex, small unit on the coast in Newport Beach, like as cheap as we can get it, along the coast there, and run this business there and kind of, and also serve the Southern California market with our stuff. So there was like a 3-pronged approach or reasoning there for doing that.
Yeah. And at the same time, also, like, again, Will doesn't stop doesn't stop. Right. So he also created an e-commerce website where we did sell artificial turf products across the country. So we would ship like big, rolls of turf all across the country. And then he's like, oh, I can also bring in golf nets and I can bring in this. And what else do people need who need turf? And so we were shipping all kinds of products all over the country, using, some of the logistics that are easier to source in California anyway, because a lot of shipping goes out of there. So it was cheaper for us to ship out of there anyway.
But you had a barbell and a rig sitting in the back of the warehouse that you needed something to do with. So you're like, yeah, let's open a gym. Let's
open a gym. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, well, so, I had a good buddy I grew up with, like, just a few years prior when I'd moved. I grew up in Michigan, like Metro Detroit area. A good buddy that I grew up, doing what kids in Detroit do, racing their Mustangs around, and we stayed in touch after I moved west, and he got into CrossFit and so did I. And so there was still this like tie that binded, and we would like each other's posts on Facebook, and, and he saw, I forgot the conversation even started. He reached out to me, I reached out to him, and something along the lines of like, yeah, I want to move out there. He asked me, can I sleep on your couch for a couple months? He's like, and I'd like to get a job out there coaching at a CrossFit gym. And I was like, well, actually, I got this warehouse full of equipment. What if we just start our own gym? And in fact, I got this huge warehouse that I, like, even though we were bringing a ton of product, we overbought a warehouse space. So we had like, we only needed like 8,000 square feet of the 13,000 square feet that we were paying for. So we're like, well, instead of even paying additional rent, I already have the equipment and I'll just pay to build some walls and we'll build a gym out of the back of this warehouse, not knowing how strict California is about their, building codes and like use space, city planning. We ended up having to move out of this space. I'll just say that. But it got us by for the first year. We started the gym. I'm definitely a beg for forgiveness than ask for permission guy. Cause I was like, yeah, we'll just build some walls in the back of this warehouse and throw a sign on the front. What'll happen? Sure enough, like a year in, the city comes knocking and like, what are you doing back here? This is a commercial zone. You can't be like, you're not like, this is not licensed for assembly. You don't even have air, water sprinkler system or whatever, all the stuff you need to have people in the space. Right. So yeah, they shut us down there and we found a space around the corner with the gym. But anyways, so me and my buddy, we started this gym, partnered up on it.
He was managing a gym actually in Detroit. So he had like the management sort of operational experience of running a gym. He wasn't just a coach. So I think when he came out, it was like, hey, I really want to open a gym someday on the West Coast. And Will's like, well, perfect. I got equipment. I got, we have the funding. We've got the location. Match made in heaven.
We both brought value to the relationship in that, like, I had that. He even said, he's like, you are obviously very good at marketing and sales. You can do lead generation, do that. You bring your special sauce. He's like, I know how to run the gym and run classes and all that stuff. So I'll bring my special sauce and we'll do this thing. And like 1 + 1 = 3, which ended up being how it went. Like we ended up having like we're growing a really good gym. But I will say, and this kind of prefaces it leads forward into the next thing and what we do next phase is, at the time, this is 2011 CrossFit, right? Like you couldn't have had it any easier in regards to growing a gym at any other point, probably in history, right? Like CrossFit was booming, the CrossFit brand was booming. It was like the hottest thing since sliced bread at the time. And there was the supply and demand hadn't yet, the supply of gyms hadn't met the demand of in most markets. So you could have literally opened up a CrossFit gym in anywhere from 2007 to 2013-ish and without much marketing, had a pretty successful gym. I mean, there were gyms that didn't even have like, they would have like the worst website ever. They'd still have 200 members at that time, right? We were good at it. So we really took advantage of the market, and we're probably one of the bigger gyms in that market. In fact, we took so many people on that the gym was full all the time, where we just had to kind of like almost have a wait list, So we had a 200 member gym out of a space there that was running pretty well, making good revenues. And that kind of brings us to kind of how we got into the gym world.
So a lot of people that start businesses with a friend or someone that's close, it doesn't always work out well. So in this case, what's the ending?
Yeah. So with that gym, so we always were on good terms. So I think just like a marriage, I mean, business partnership is like a marriage with like dire consequences, right? Like if your partnership doesn't work well, like the business isn't going to function. So it was very clear communication, which definitely we still had our moments, but me and Eric had, my partner Eric at the time, had very different personality types. And I was always very good at like, bringing issues out into the open, where like that wasn't necessarily his strength, but that's okay, because as long as one of the two of us did, we had the conversations, right? So like we grew the gym, it ran well. But at the time, so this is overlapping with the turf company and kind of like its demise. I shouldn't say its demise, because we made the choice to move on because we were burnt out. So we sold off parts of that company, liquidated parts of that company, didn't have a reason to really be in California anymore. The gym was there, but like it wasn't enough money for both of us to like really like, I think our, like between the two of us, it was like 10K in profit we could pay each other. So 5K each, or one of us makes 10, right? And we're both guys that want to make 10, like, or at least, right, doing what we're doing. And he was cool staying there in California. He had met his wife, had come, a girlfriend at the time who became his wife, could come out, and they were like, we can run the gym. If you want to go back, we'll buy the other half of the gym out. I gave him a fantastic deal at the time. Looking back, I'm like, man, but it also was like, I even also asked him like, I wanted to sell it for more for sure. I knew what it was worth, but I was like, what do you have? Because I don't really want to finance this and deal with the muddy waters of this. I'm like, tell me what you got. He's like, I got X. I'm like, okay, cool. Write me a check for X. You take the gym on. I'll take the proceeds of that, and also the proceeds of my other business, which I left with like hundreds of thousands of dollars in assets sold off. We also bought a home in California at the time, which if you would have bought a home when we did any time in the last decade and held it till now, you would have made a lot of money. But just from like 2011 when we bought the home, from like 2013 when we left and sold it, it had gone up like just a home on the California coast, that was worth half of what it was worth prior to the recession, had come up, 200,000 or 300,000. So we had, went from like, I went from moving west with nothing in my name and selling cars on a lot to like, a few years later, leaving California with all we had done at that time with enough equity and cash to go and like kind of restart. So we moved back to Phoenix.
We had also just recently purchased, in 2012, we purchased 2 condos here in Old Town Scottsdale. When people are like, you guys are crazy. Why are you buying property right now? Yeah. And Will's like, how could you not be buying property right now? These like the value of this property in this location, like you're insane if you're not. So we bought a couple properties and we had just finished renovating one of them. So we actually moved back into that property. Like as we were coming back to Arizona, we had like an open property just sitting there waiting for us. And honestly, I think both of us were a bit burnt out on California, generally speaking. Like I was really tired of all of the congestion and the traffic, and I don't get in the water. So let's be honest, like I'm not out there surfing or anything. So what do I got to be at the beach for? All I'm doing is dragging sand everywhere with me. So I was definitely ready to move back. And I think Will was, ready for a new adventure as well. But
yeah. That's just one of those things where like we had built enough doing it to that point where we could literally, I think what was I, 27, 28, 29 at that time, how many people, full swing into their career can like say, hey, I want to just sell everything off and start fresh. Had that opportunity. Could have probably held on to all those businesses and they would have probably continued to grow over the next, what the economy did 5, 6, 7 years. But, at the time, we kind of built a behemoth with that turf company that was like, we just couldn't keep up with. And it was like, either we like pretty much start this thing over and like restaff it up and do all that work, or like we just do the same thing someplace else now that we know. And in the meantime, maybe I invest in educating myself, getting some mentorship on that other half of the business, which is essentially what I did when we moved back to Phoenix. We decided to move back to Phoenix, open the gym here, but we had money to invest in the gym now. So we were like, we're going to build the best CrossFit gym in Phoenix, which we were definitely in that conversation. There's some great gyms here in Phoenix. So I wouldn't say that we were the best at the time because I don't want to slight anybody that ran a really, really good gym, but there's definitely a need for like some professional offerings here in the market because most of the markets were behind the California market in regards to like fitness. So we got here, did that, played it small for a while, built the community base, a gym, but it was definitely hard during that time. Like, when you go from, $5 million a year business in California on the coast, paying yourself on salary, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars and, kind of living up what you thought was the dream. Because up until we had those things, like growing up in Michigan, I was like, it'd be really cool one day. Like I remember going to like the Hollister store, right? You remember Hollister? Is that still a thing? Like and they had like you go to Hollister, there's like the TVs with the California coastline always on it, right? Like I remember seeing those being like, I'm going to live there one day. That's when I know I've made it, right? Here I was mid-20s living in California on the coast and, things were good and, but it's one of those things that like you hear, it's kind of cliche, right? Like once you reach those kind of like goals, you're kind of like, okay, well now what do I do? Right. Like it is great and all, but it also wasn't as cracked up as I thought it was going to be. Not with
burn it down and start over.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, let's set new goals. Let's set new directions. Let's take a look at our core values and like what we really want out of life. And like, besides just like where we live and material things and all this stuff and like what kind of impact we want to have. And that, like learning what that meant too is big and was kind of more brought to me by like some of the mentorship I got of like, hey, like something else has to drive you besides the money, and you'll make more money anyways. Cause like most of the most successful people are all impact driven people. Like they're not really trying to make as much money. They're more trying to like disrupt a market or like defy popular convention on something or break some beliefs or whatever, right? That's what they're really trying to do. And because they do that, they build a product that's different and ultimately they end up crushing it in the market because everybody just rushes to that product because it's what was needed, right? So yeah, so the gym, there was a lull there with the new gym and moving back to Phoenix. And stop me at any time if, I'm just going here. So I'm just going in sequential order, but I know I can talk. So jump in. But anyways, so I have the gym and it's like, okay, got to reinvent, got the gym, we're growing the gym, 16, 17-ish hits with the gym. And it was funny because even though we owned this gym, I never really did the marketing stuff that I did with like my first businesses. I never really, because again, coming from opening the first gym in 2011, I did what like every CrossFit gym owner did at the time, which was like, we just opened up and people showed up and you didn't really do any marketing. Like you didn't do it. And so the second gym, I kind of just, I kind of figured opening the second gym that Phoenix was a way for us to lay low and just kind of, take whatever leads off of that traffic without really having to do a lot of work. I was kind of thinking we'll be low key for a while. We'll build this community-based business. People will just show up because it's great. All the things that CrossFit gym, not just CrossFit gym, but just fitness studio owners tell themselves, right? Build it and they will come. Did that. But by 2016, 2017, the market wasn't the same as 2011 when we opened the first gym. It was the same in every market in the world, right? Like the market had become competitive, right? The supply of gyms in every market had begun to meet or exceed the demand in most markets, right? You now had multiple CrossFit gyms, and CrossFit had no rules on licensing, so you could have 4 CrossFit gyms on one busy corner. You now had Orange Theory and F45 on the same busy corner, and then you also had like all your big box gyms, starting to finally come back because it's almost like a lot of those group gyms took advantage of the momentum towards community-based fitness, and the big access style gyms had kind of fallen out of popularity, but they've been kind of coming back over the last 5 years, right? So, it was like for a while there, it was almost like the millennials didn't want to do what their parents did, which was bodybuilding. So like they did CrossFit instead. But now millennials are aging and they're like, well, I don't really necessarily want to do CrossFit all the time either. So some are kind of like going, it's almost like it's spreading back out in the market. And some people were cool with going to a 24-hour gym and doing bodybuilding and all that stuff, right? So anyways, that's where we ended up with that. And I realized we need to start kind of applying what we knew about lead generation and marketing to our gym with that second gym. And at the same time, I started sharing it. It was funny. It was like I kind of was doing what they tell you should do now. If you were to go to like some like how to build a business, mentor, they'd be like, you should start sharing content, right? But everybody does that now. So it's a lot harder to grow a business just doing content anymore. But at the time, it was early. It was 2016 Facebook. I was in the different groups for CrossFit gym owners. I was in the different groups for fitness gym owners. And like, I wasn't trying to like be somebody in these groups. I just saw that like everybody was asking these questions about like how to grow their gym. Like I knew how to grow a business. So I was like, I'm going to share with you guys. I was kind of like documenting the journey openly. I'm going to share with you guys how I grow my gym, right? Like, and then every time I had a win, I would share in there, you guys should try this. And then they would go and do it. And some people would have some success. Or like, hey guys, I would share pictures of our gym. Like, hey guys, we just set up our what do they call it? Like reception area of our gym. So we can, with a pro shop, and you should do it this way. Cause that way they'll buy more product. Right. And like people would go and like model that and have success. And after a while, like in those groups, people started saying like, oh man, this, like, can you help me with my gym? Right. Can you help me with my gym or my fitness business? And at the time I didn't really know what to do. I was like, I can give you some advice. I don't have like a way to systemize this knowledge and give it to you, but I'll help. And then after getting asked enough, I was like, okay, I'll do some freelance stuff, right? Like I can build websites. I've been building them since before digital marketing was a thing. I'm like, I'll help you build a good lead generating website and maybe hook up some stuff on the back end of that so you can kind of automate the processes of what was available at the time. And started doing it freelance. Didn't like the freelance thing because it was almost like I was positioning myself as an agency, like you pay me and I build you something. And that world is really challenging because like, especially small business owners, they'll string you out forever if something's not like exactly the way they want it. And like they wouldn't just trust the process. So I didn't like that subordinate relationship with my clients. I wanted someone to look at me like, if I'm coming into your business, you trust me to like build good stuff that's going to work. And that like you can let go a little bit and be an actual business owner and delegate and let this stuff go and and trust the process. Right. So we ended up after a couple of years of doing some freelance work, I kind of let it go. And then I went back to it. And kind of through like my experience in the mentorship world and like meeting some really good mentors and really good coaches kind of at a time when it wasn't super saturated, I was like, I would like to do that for gym owners, right? I would like to do that, like, because it's kind of the direction I felt myself going. And it's just, I'm really good at breaking things into processes and all that. So we decided to open up the company we run now. And
that was the business that he called me and was like, hey, when I'm like 3 months postpartum with a 20-month-old and a newborn. Yeah. And he's like, hey, so I'm thinking about starting this business, but, and here's the thing is like, we've started enough businesses that when he says I'm thinking about starting a business, I know exactly what that means. And that's basically, he's going to be a shut-in for a little while. So he's like, so what do you think? And I was like, go for it. Like, I don't know. I know it'll be, harder in the short term, but I trust the long-term vision. So
and so
that's when I was talking earlier about that thing. That's what this brings us all the way to this part of the story.
I like the connected nature of it. You were foreshadowing. I like it. So how many years were you into it with the gym before you kind of started thinking about the coaching aspect?
We officially launched it in February of 2019.
Okay.
But you were doing the website stuff probably a couple years prior to
Oh
that.
yeah,
And that was
freelance
kind of
stuff.
that was kind of a soft entry, if you will.
Yeah, it was kind of like if someone messaged me and was like, "Hey, I don't," I would tell them how to do stuff, and then they'd be like, "Can you just do it for me?" And I'd be like, "Sure." Here's what it costs, right? And I didn't know how to productize that service, so I'd just be like,
Right.
"Pay me X, I'll build you a website," right? I didn't realize, that wasn't the right way to do that. So that was probably 2017, but again, that was very soft, kind of a side hustle. I branded the company informally Metcon Marketing. Metcons, they call CrossFit workouts Metcons. So it was Metcon Marketing. And that was our original version of what our company is now, Big Little Gyms.
But formally it was, I want to say, February of 2019.
That was when we had an actual, so I had between 2017 and 2019, went and gotten mentorship from some of the best coaches in the world in regards to how to build these kind of programs, how to, started to sharpen my axe as in a consulting, coaching regard, and how to get my clients results and how to structure programs and all these things. And so by 2019, I felt confident enough to say, okay, we have a product here. We have something we can give to our clients that will help them, either put a system into the business they don't have or turn around their business if it's not maybe going in the direction that they want. And our ultimate impetus with the whole thing for every one of our clients is help them be, in this book, it sits right next to me here, Rich Dad Poor Dad, there's a chapter in there called the cash flow quadrant. And in the quadrants 4 squares basically. And on the left side, it has employed and self-employed. And on the right side, it has business owner and investor. And the whole book's about you don't want to be self-employed. And it's funny because and again, I'm big on language patterns, and a lot of people, when they say self-employed, they don't even really know what they're saying. But I do think language patterns from the outside in take their toll on you. Even if you don't know what something means, self-employed means I'm employed by myself or my business employs me, right? I don't know about you, but if I'm an entrepreneur, I don't want to be employed by anybody, not even myself, right? I want to be independent of my business and give my business what it needs. I want to install systems in my business that can operate without me. Now, I know for a while when I start the business, there needs to be a little bit of grit, right? Every business I started with me selling and marketing and fulfilling on the product. But as quickly as I can, I replace myself on the organizational flow chart. I move myself up the organizational flow chart from implementer to unifier or manager to executive to eventually, the visionary of the company, right? And that's learning that was something I learned back, when I started the second gym and started looking for how I can build the gym the right way and started to do some marketing stuff. And one of my mentors had kind of given me that framework of you're down here in this integrator role. You got to stop doing all the things. And it was tough for me because I was also very blue collar. I was raised in Metro Detroit where we used to, if our car broke, we fixed it, right? If the car needed the oil change, we did the oil change. To save $20, we'd sit underneath our car covered in oil for 3 hours, right? If you need brake pads, you'd hit the brake pads, right? So it was really tough to me to go with that. But there's a ceiling as to how much the integrator or the low level implementer of the business can make, because you're always everything you decide to do in your business is choosing to not do something else. And if you're choosing to do the integrator level stuff, that means you're ignoring the executive and managerial level stuff in your business that every business needs to have done if it's going to grow, right? So, that's what we do. Our goal is for clients, right? And with that comes the whole spectrum of lead gen, marketing, sales, operations, fulfillment, hiring, all that stuff.
Yeah. And kind of also to wrap in where my role came into this business was that with our gym, over that decade plus of time, I was always employee number one, right? And so for me, it was hey, you're going to coach. I'm great. At the time I had been doing figure competitions, but I was yeah, I can do this. I went and, got all the credentials I needed. And I was cool, I'm going to coach now. Okay, cool. And then it was all right, well, people need nutrition. And so I'm all right, well, how can I help people with their nutrition? And so we started building nutrition programs, and I went and got the education I needed for that. And so a lot of the, the fulfillment models of getting people the results that they are coming to us for, a lot of that, came into some of my hands. And so I, within the business, started working through the fulfillment and the nutritional component. And so, with our business, as we started this new business, naturally my role was like, how do we plug these systems in so that coaches can become more efficient with their time, right? Because the coaches and the gym owners, like when you're doing a lot of one-on-one, which is what most people do with nutrition, it's incredibly hard to make enough money to make it worth and to make it a full-time job. And obviously that's something with our gym had grown fairly well. He didn't really mention this, but our gym grew, quite quickly. And especially when he started implementing a lot of that, those systems that we learned with our prior business, we were anywhere around 300 to 400 members. So I had to, if I was going to create a system for a nutrition program, it had to be scalable, right? Because I'm only one person. And at the time I've got infants. So I'm only one person. I need to make sure that I have the time because I'm coaching. I'm doing a lot of the, the back end work for some of this business stuff. I'm more of the number cruncher, if you will, the spreadsheets and taxes and all that sort of inventories person. Will's just like, boom, 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 sell them, go. We're going to do this thing. And he'll go be like, hey, we're going to run a nutrition challenge. And then he goes and basically gets everybody signed up. And then he says, hey, I need you to go create a nutrition challenge. And I'm like, cool. So that's really where he'll go and sell something. I'm like, cool, let me go make it. So I'll go and create something. And then obviously it's an iteration process from there. But that's where my role came into this other business, this consulting business. And where I got pulled into that was a lot of gyms need more revenue streams. And I'm was really good at helping create and the fulfillment process for these revenue streams that gyms could add on to their business. And that's really where my role came into all of this, into our current business.
Did you guys end up did you have 2 gyms at the time in Arizona, or was it just this one gym?
Just one, but they were back to back. So the one, that's why when you hear me say, or if you've seen any of my stuff, about owning 2 gyms, it was really sequential, one and then the other.
And so, I mean, you kind of had this overlap where you have this fully functioning gym and, 300 or 400 person gym. If anyone's in that world, that's a lot of moving parts, right? And there's a lot of fulfillment there and a lot of people to keep happy. And typically with gyms like that, you have a lot of churn too. And so you've got a lot of front end that's got to be bringing in people. And so, but then you're also doing kind of your side gig. This kind of a theme here, right? In your journey, kind of got the side gig thing going on. And so you ended up selling the gym, but was there kind of a tipping point where it's like, hey, I can't give enough time I need to one thing or the other, and I'm splitting too much, and which is kind of shortchanging both? Or what was the thought process around I need to move on? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Can I kick that off for you, Will? Can I just kick that whole
Tee it up.
Answer
Tee it up for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what I'll say is when he made that phone call to me and said, hey, I think this is, the direction I want to, this is what I want to do. He wants to fully, build this business. I was like, okay, cool. When he came home, we had a conversation at this time, I want to say October of 2020, our lease was up on our location for our gym. And obviously this is about almost 2 years, right? So just shy of 2 years until that time. And when we sat down and had a deep conversation about this, when he got home, we both made a firm commitment to each other that come hell or high water, which is funny that we coined that. We said, come hell or high water, come October 2020, we will no longer own this gym. And we laughed and we were like, whether we had to sell it off for pieces, or equipment, liquidate or whatever it took, we would not sign another lease. Obviously that was a ridiculous thought, right? Clearly we're going to sell this gym for a really good, margin at this time, because it's so built well. And then obviously that was a conversation we had. So October 2020 was essentially our deadline. And I'll let Will kind of take over from here, how the rest of it.
So let me jump in there quick. So so you were already thinking about selling the gym 2 years in advance. Was it, we're burned out from this, it's just not the world we want to be in for the next 5 or 10 years, or hey, I'm ready for the next adventure?
Yeah, no, it was, we built that gym intentionally from the get-go to sell, okay. And so, in my quest, upon resetting the exodus of all the prior ventures in California, I had always been big in my quest for knowledge, but I really amped it up a level. And, I read some really, really good books, Good to Great, Built to Sell, Rich Dad's cash flow quadrant stuff, all this stuff. And I was like, okay, we're going to build this business a specific way, in a market where people don't normally do it. Right. I was up to the challenge. I'd already built one gym successfully, just marketing it. Right. I was like, this time I want to like break all the rules and defy popular convention and show everyone that like we can. That's part of why I documented it openly. Also is to show everybody like, hey, like, because I'd see these groups of CrossFit gym owners all like making this consensus that things can't be done a certain way. And I was like, watch me do it. Right. So we did it. Right. And, so that was always the intention. We weren't going to do like most people do with the gym, which is like keep it until we're burnt out. And then like it just turns into a pile of rubble and rocks that you sell for pieces. Right. We're like, we're going to,
Also, I would say that around the time that around that time when we had decided to like, hey, this is the direction we're going, I think Will probably worked like on the business, maybe 5 to 10 hours a week. We no longer coached any classes unless we wanted to jump in and coach. We had a full staff. We had a general manager. We weren't, in terms of being in the business, we were completely fairly removed from that. So it's not like we were burnt out in the sense that we had essentially built this thing and it was running efficiently and growing on autopilot for the most part. So,
but why don't keep it as a cash flowing asset and allow it to just kind of be like real estate, but it's a business? What was there that thought as well, or was it like we just kind of want to take this move?
Yeah, that was a thought. I mean, I think I really wanted to. So I wanted to try to actually build it and sell it for like a full evaluation. That was actually like intentionally something I wanted to do when I started that gym. And I like that idea. And I think that's a really, really good idea for a lot of people, especially right now where you're not going to make money in almost any other investment, right? Like right now is actually a really good time to go start small businesses because at least you can get a 10, 20, 30% on your money year over year. Just if you build it right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to get that in the stock market for the next couple of years. You're not going to get that in crypto for a while. You're not going to get that in homes for a while. Small businesses are a good place to go right now. In fact, that's what you're seeing people do now is build portfolios of small businesses. That's actually like something we might get into. But at the time we weren't, I really wanted to go all in and land a big plane. So it's like, we're going to land a big plane, you got to build a big runway. And I really wanted to kind of clear the path. And also I did want to check that box of like exiting and selling that gym, like with intention in a way that no one ever reports doing.
That was part of that bucket list, right?
Yeah. It was part of my entrepreneurial bucket list. I'm going to build this business. I'm going to build it for full evaluation. And I'm going to sell it. And meanwhile, I'm also going to be like awesome at running the gym and build a great community, which we did, and hire like an awesome staff. Do all the things I kind of didn't do with the prior businesses that I left. The reason why we burnt out on the turf company, and that was a case of burnout, was because like we didn't build, we kind of built it on a house of cards, if you will. We had some of the pieces, but I never once picked up built an organizational flow chart for that business. And we were doing $5 million a year. Like that's ridiculous to me now, right? So the second business, I was like, I got to learn how to do all this stuff. I need to learn business, right? Because just being good at sales and marketing is not being a businessman. Right. That's just being good at sales and marketing. And you can do that for your own business or another business or any way in between. That doesn't make you an entrepreneur,
Right. So, I mean, was it almost like a little bit of... Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to probably say exactly what you're going to say. So go ahead and ask the question.
Well, I was just going to say, like, you don't hear a lot of people in the gym industry selling business, like the actual business, right? Because most of them aren't really built to sell. They're built on a personality. And so there's not really a sellable asset at the end of the day. If the person that everyone loves and trusts leaves, like everyone's bouncing too. And so was there a little bit of a chip on your shoulder to be like, I'm going to kind of defy maybe conventional norms in this industry and build a training facility that is sellable?
Yeah. I think the only reason why that, knowing what I know now after working with quite a few hundred gyms, and seeing it happen is, if you make yourself the face of the company, that's what everybody attaches to, then yeah, like you are the brand, right? But like really, like they can still buy you, and if they really buy you, and you're good at getting this message across that like I build good stuff, that means they're going to equally trust in the people you bring in and recruit, right? And that's very much how we did that at our gym. It was me. I was part of the branding. We were really strong on branding in and of itself. Like our gym Spark had strong branding in and of itself. And they didn't need to know who I was to come work out at my gym. Whereas like some CrossFit gyms, like the owners, like there's a lot of ego that sometimes drives gym owners where it's like, they want to be known as like the guy. I didn't care about any of that. I was like, no, we're going to build a really, really good business. And Will will be known for running a really, really, really good gym, not being a really, really, really good coach, right? I'll hire coaches better than myself because there are a lot of coaches out there better than I am. And I consider myself pretty good. I'm a pretty analytical person and a good teacher. And so I think I'm a good coach, and I've had enough people tell me that over the years, but it would be egotistical for me to think that there's not better people out there that like aren't full on. Like I was trying to coach while also running a business. So what if I just hired a guy who's a better coach than I am, and that's all he does? He's probably going to kick my ass, right? Excuse my language. And we did. We brought in really, really good coaches. Our general manager, Sam, maybe he'll listen to this. I mean, he was amazing and was incredible with people. And like, there was never any insecurity about him taking my shine, right? Like we had great team meetings, everything got communicated between us from top to bottom. And, I'd be in the office working on something and someone would finish a class and they'd walk over and knock on my door and they'd be like, hey, Will, I just want to let you know, like, I love your gym. Right. And like, I hadn't coached him in months, you know what I mean? Like I still got my shine by allowing other people in my business that were really good at what they did to shine.
How did you find good people?
I think especially in particular in the niche of the CrossFit gym world, obviously it's pretty niche down as to who can coach in that world because they got to be pretty involved in that particular methodology. There's almost like a cult-like following there. And they have to have their level 1 and understand how to run those particular classes. So like, it's really hard to recruit locally. It was easier back then when I made those hires. It's only gotten harder because, there's definitely, it goes with the economy, right? Back in like 2012, 2013 to 2015 to 2017, it gently tapered off. But during that whole entire time, there were a lot of people that like worked side hustles, right? A lot of people that, had a main job and it didn't pay that well because we're recovering from a recession. And they're like, oh, I'm going to go, be a coach at this CrossFit gym where I work out. And so people would step up and help, right? So it's easy. There's a lot of people in every gym at the time that would do that kind of thing. But then as the economy recovered and pay got stronger and jobs got stronger, and a lot of those millennials got out of college and got professions and careers, there became less and less people available to in every market to just go work a job, go work side hustles. Go ahead, dear.
Yeah, because a lot of coaches, right? Like if they're especially for full time, it's like they have the choice between coming to work for your small business or going to work for a Fortune 500 company, maybe at an entry level position, but with great benefits. So you're definitely kind of working against that when the market picks back up, and now people can get these $100,000 a year jobs, entry level jobs with benefits. You're like, how do I compete with that? And actually, I would say that what Will did really well when it came to hiring is, I will say when he put out an application to bring on an employee, first of all, we didn't typically hire from within. We would oftentimes hire people externally. And I think a lot of that was because we weren't necessarily just bringing people up from the community saying, oh, everybody likes you, have you be a coach. That oftentimes doesn't work very well in the long run. It can, but not always. And so we would hire people. He would put out a job application, and it would probably like push off more people than it pulls in, because in the application, it was very it was very thorough, and it had a lot of requirements for you to like do certain things in order to just apply. And this what it served to do was push the people who weren't going to be good fits away, pull the people who would be good fits in. And then, a lot of what he did within our business was really creating I want to say the community within our own coaches, within our creating an environment of growth. And like when we had our coaches meetings, most of what we discussed in coaches meetings had nothing to do with operations of the gym. It was always, how can we help these people grow to be better people? How can we support them in their lifelong journey? If a coach is like, I want to open a gym someday, that's not going to be like, oh, well, you can't work here because then you can steal my clients. We don't come at it from that perspective. It's like, cool, how can I help you develop the skills you need to someday own a gym? And so he's helping them develop a lot of skills outside of just being a coach. So if you were an employee for us, like it was not an expectation that you just show up and coach a class. It was like, you're bought into our vision, because our vision is much larger than, the sum of each individual part. And I think he did a really good job of creating that environment. And so coaches wanted to work for us. They wanted to come and work for us and be on our team because they got a lot of skills outside of just being a coach.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty spot on.
And I think you have to do that if you want to bring in coaches nowadays. I think you have to offer them more than just money, because they're going to get money somewhere else. You have to give them more back. Like you cannot just trade time for money.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it's exactly what I was going to say. Is like, I always viewed it like this person, is providing a pretty tremendous value to our community, and we're going to pay them $20 an hour to coach a class. It doesn't make sense. But I mean, unfortunately, that's just the economics of the business. We really can't afford to pay them much more than that and still make money. And that's just the going rate for the job in the market at the time. So we were paying strong at the time, but it was still $20 to $25 a class, right? That's what you paid people. So it was like, how can I provide value to these young people? Because most of them were young. There were some older people, but even them were still growth-minded people. We generally sought out growth-minded people, I would say, in our community. Mm-hmm. A lot of them were college students that like kind of were also looking for some mentorship and maybe a little bit like, I wouldn't say lost, but just like, they were people that generally wanted to learn more about what I was learning all the time, right? So like our coaches staff meetings on Mondays would sometimes be like you went to a Tony Robbins concert, right? It was like, I'd be like breaking down like the 4 levels of value and like, and that's not 4 levels of value.
Consciousness.
Like, levels of consciousness, right? We were getting into all kinds of, and they would leave and they'd be like, this is so awesome. Like, this is amazing. Like, and like, so our people would happily work for us at what was the going rate in the market at the time, which, they were all more talented people than I think what I could pay them for, just because based on the market and what the job paid. But they were, I looked at like, how can I over deliver as their employer, right? Mm-hmm. Like versus me just give them money, right? Because it seemed like when we used to just do it, because we definitely was a time where that was the expectation. Like, you coach some classes and we give you money, and if you're not there, we're mad, right? Like it's kind of, it's like people don't really like to enter into agreements like that. Like they want to feel like, how can I get more out of this relationship, right? And it's on us to do that, right? So,
and was that a conscious decision that you guys made, or was it something that you grew into after maybe fumbling through it early on and realizing maybe I didn't help these people as much as I could, or is it just part of your personality?
That's a really big, deep, heavy question, actually.
Yeah. Do you want to answer it here?
You can. No, this is your story.
Oh yeah, no,
I would be concise with it.
Definitely a piece of this was like personal transformation, right? Like I'm turning over all the stones I can in regards to like life and going, I don't know, just going into having all kinds of adventures in regards to my own psychology. Definitely during this time I started to have some like mental health issues as well. What was that, 2017-ish, 2018-ish?
2016. I was pregnant with our daughter.
Yeah. So I started to have some really heavy mental health issues. Yeah, 2016. So this was before 2017, which is when kind of things started going in the right direction, right? So it was like, started to have some mental health issues 2015, and then like they wouldn't go away. Like I was having intrusive thoughts. I thought I was going crazy. Like I just couldn't turn off certain parts of my brain, which sounds weird, but it was almost like just couldn't turn it off, right? Like certain words would get stuck, bad words, things that like do, like harmful things, right? Like to yourself and things like that. And your brain starts to repeat that enough. I think it was some sort of obsessive compulsive thing that I had developed through like how my brain was operating at the time that I didn't really realize I'd worked my way into. And so I was like, how do I unravel myself from this? Because if I don't soon, like I'm probably not going to be around, because I'm going to listen to one of these thoughts one day. And that was creating an anxiety in of itself. I'm going to listen to one of these thoughts one day and make a mistake I can't recover from, because I don't generally want to act on any of these thoughts. But like, on a bad day, I could catch myself snoozing on that, right? And do something, right? So I was like, that's not what I want for my, at that point, I'm not thinking about myself anymore. Like for the people that depend on me, my wife, my daughter, all these things. I used to get a lot more emotional about this. I'm still get emotional. I just do a better job of hiding it as I'm talking about it now. But it's definitely an emotional thing for me still to this day, recovering from it, because out of that required like a deep personal journey, like, the depths of your soul kind of stuff, right? Like, I did all the things clinically that they say you should do, right? I did all the things like holistically they say you should do, right? Like, literally, to look back and now it's comical, but like it was what was necessary at the time. I had like a guru friend who was into like, the mindset stuff. And we would go like on top of a mountain and beat my chest, my shirt off and scream these primal screams and to let all that out. And then like, also had therapy, and then, even got into like psychedelics and stuff like that to like try to maybe change the wiring in my brain with chemicals, right? Like, with, natural chemicals and all that. I can't say it was any one thing, but I think it was this, that I was very intentional about it and I did the work. It was probably a combination of all those things. And definitely, people say holistic or clinical, one or the other. It's like, no, man, like you can use both these things, because I would say definitely the holistic stuff was probably more actionable and real, and really me just putting rubber to the road of doing the hard work. And then clinical was like, yeah, you're going to take a little bit of medicine to kind of slow the thoughts down a little bit, to kind of get ahead of this, to kind of figure out where they're coming from, and learn a lot about subconscious mind and like Carl Jung and like personality types. And like all this stuff, man. Like,
yeah, I think to kind of like
human behavior,
Yeah. And I think a lot of that to say, I think what drove Will in business prior to this sort of inner rebirth, if you will, was always, professionally, it was always monetary. It's like, how much money do you make? That determines how successful you are. Right. And like, based on our trajectory of success when he was 24, certainly we're millionaires by the time we're 30. Right. So, or 35, and certainly before we have kids. And then of course I get pregnant, and I think that might have triggered a lot of these, feelings and thoughts to kind of come crumbling down, because now we've got this gym, which, I mean, it's running okay. But I mean, in terms of the ceiling of potential, the scale of business, or the ceiling of which he thought we'd be at the time, which is what he determined was success, it wasn't there. And so I think, going through this process helped him redefine in so many ways what his, what the value and the purpose of his life mission is, and what he determines as success. And I think obviously that trickled into everything in life, and every moment, every conversation, what drives him from a very fundamental, deep level. And I think obviously when it comes to that exchange, that value exchange between us and an employee, it's, prior to 2016, it was, you show up, I pay you. Post 2016, it was, I need to make sure that I provide value above and beyond, because you're giving me something, your time, that you can never get back, and that I could never pay you enough for, because it's invaluable. So how can I help you provide more purpose to your life and your vision? And, how could you be a part of ours? And are you a good fit to be a part of our vision? So maybe that answers that question in terms of like, there was a huge life shift that happened here that fundamentally changed, I think, the mission and the purpose, even though it's still kind of the same. Like, what drives and what determines the success is very different.
100%. Yeah. It's definitely like, anybody's into the hero's journey form of storytelling, like the Joseph Campbell stuff. If you read into that stuff, do you read into that stuff, Trevor? I think you're kind of one of the, you like the hero's journey type stuff.
Yep.
In that book, it's not really the hero's journey. It's actually the hero's two journeys. There's some authors that have actually pieced this out to say it's actually two journeys in every hero's story, right? Thor, for example, and we like Thor. Thor is actually one of our superheroes we kind of like borrow some stuff from in our program with our gyms, where like one of our awards is called the 50K Club. It's a Thor hammer. And that's because like, Thor, in order to become the noble Thor that can pick up the hammer, like has to go through an internal journey. Like Thor's root origin story is one of an internal journey. Like he had all the tangible physical things, aspects, gifts, but he lost them all when his ego overrode his, he lost his awareness for like his true self. Right. So like, and that's not, you don't really see that as much in the Marvel versions of it. They kind of pick up in the after story where he's already kind of the Thor, but in every here, even in those iterations, there's still like Thor loses his power, right? And then has to get it back, but it's an internal journey. It's the same thing. And like, that's what I went through, is like an internal journey. I had the tangible skill sets to be, whatever, but didn't really know what to do with them, and kind of felt lost because like, yeah, like it's, beyond a certain amount of money. I mean, you're kind of like, okay, my base needs are met. Like what's going to propel me to want to keep doing this every day when it gets hard, or like, what more is in it, right? It has to be, I think, external things in regards to, there's be an internal drive, and that like it meets like what you want to do, and then external in regards to like who you serve and like what you do. So there's like the two journeys, right? So for me, that was like my internal journey. And I'm always still working on it, right? Like I'm reading a book called The Fourth Turning right now, which is about like human behavior and like literally our last century, and like how the generations and like how it's changed ever since. Because I'm trying to get an understanding of like what the next 20 years is going to look like. No one has a crystal ball, but the best thing we have to look at is past, to see like, because everything's cyclical, right? And like learning about nature and how nature's cyclical and all this stuff. So I don't know, all these things are part of the journey. So I guess you can say I kind of like became a more enlightened version of myself, and it wasn't just the practical, let's market and make a bunch of money stuff, Yeah.
Well, I mean, first off, hats off to you for putting in the work, like noticing it first and foremost. This is the way, this is the path I'm going down, and then willing to put in the work to come out on the other side better. Because you see a lot of people that that's not the way it works out. And so, do you see you bringing that in? So now, I mean, now you're into coaching coaches, right? You're helping coaches run better businesses, run more profitable businesses, enjoy their businesses, maybe even exit their businesses someday if that's what they want to do. So do you see yourself bringing this, like what you've learned from this, and maybe this is maybe a little bit of how you're different than maybe other business coaches, is you have this experience that you're helping inject into these gym owners and coaches that you work with on a daily basis?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it already is 100% a difference maker, right? Like in the very content I put out, like on my, if you're friends with me on Facebook, which is up until now, it's been primarily my primary lead generation channel. I post about these kinds of things, right? This is what I post about. And then, there's always an element of like, getting people to understand why we're doing what we're doing, because, I think if you're always just tactic driven, you don't have that higher level understanding of why you're doing a thing, and then there's not a reasoning for doing it. Like you're just going to keep making the same mistake over and over again and looking for like a new tactic, right? Like every time, right? Like that, what was it like a few years ago? It was like the 6-week challenges for the gym were like the crazy. They were like, those were like the hottest thing since sliced bread to market outwardly. I think that we internally, they're still fantastic and great. And with like Coach Catalyst, you guys do a fantastic job. That's why it's great. It's perfect. Right. But client acquisition, it's still a great offer, but it wasn't, this stuff has changed since. And I think, if you just always buy into one offer, whatever the hottest thing is, you're going to be looking for the next one. And there's always going to be that, there's like a curve or an arc between finding the next thing, and you're always going to be a little bit behind. Right. So it's better if you can raise that awareness to kind of learn about these things and like how to construct a good offer. And yeah, we give our clients that's the stuff too, like done for them. So we give them the practical stuff, but there's always like a layering of like, in everything I do, of like, here's why this works. You have to understand that this is the psychology behind this and why this works and why we have to set it up this way,
Yeah. And also I'd say that most people don't have business problems. They have personal problems that make it really hard for them to run a good business. So I think a lot of what Will does is help unwind a lot of their brains in terms of like their limiting beliefs about, helping them open their minds to the possibility that maybe what they've believed isn't true, to kind of help get them out of their own way. And that's a personal journey. That's not something that's like, oh, here, let me give you all the business things and the business tactic. It's like, you can give somebody all that stuff and they're still never going to do anything with it because they're not in the right mind. They need to change the way they fundamentally think if they want to have a good business. Some, not all, there's gym owners that come on with us that are also like running really good businesses and just need a couple like little, tactical things. But, I'd say by and large, a lot of the gyms that come on and work with us, they're struggling. And a lot of times those struggles are coming out of, the way they're thinking, not necessarily like anything that, is a tactic.
Yeah, it's a belief, right? They have some sort of belief in their head. That's why they keep doing things this certain way. You hear like, for example, CrossFit gym owners, it's not exclusively who we work with, by the way. I know we talk a lot about them. That's just because that's the realm I come from. I'd say 60% of what we work with are CrossFit gym owners, but, we work with all other types of group fitness gyms. And no matter which one it is, there's always this, sentiment of, and it's even more so with the CrossFit gym owner, that we do things this way because, right. And I'm like, okay, what is that because? And it's like, well, that's the way CrossFit gyms do things. I'm like, well, who actually wrote that down? Like who did someone write that down? I mean, Greg Glassman founded CrossFit, and he talked about the methodology, but he actually has nothing written about how the gyms run. He didn't even say it had to be a group fitness methodology. Just the initial first few gyms that did it as a group fitness methodology, and everybody cloned that, and then everybody priced it a certain way, so everybody cloned that, and it's just like, so it's like all this is just a belief, right? And like rather than like go and maybe question conventional wisdom, they just follow it. And then like, and the thing is like, what, 80% of these gyms don't make any money, right? Like, so like you're going to go follow the consensus wisdom that doesn't make any money, like with the justification that that's just the way it's done, right? That doesn't make any sense, right? And when I lay it out like that to them, they're like, actually, that makes a lot of sense. So what should we do? And I'm like, well, here's some data. Okay. So here's some actual data that shows you that doing it this way actually works. And it's not just me saying do it because I'm one guy who said to do it, but because we got 400 gyms doing it that way and 100 different markets. And, and with this percentage of success rate, and if you build the system this way, you'll see X result, right? So, yeah.
I mean, staying on that note, what's some low-hanging fruit right now that you see for gym owners where it's an easy thing to implement that they're just maybe not paying attention to, that they could start implementing today right after they listen to this?
Something that they
I can if you want to think on that for a second,
yeah.
I'll give you kind of like a very easy, a really easy one. And that's like most gym owners or even coaches for that matter, they have like one core offering and that's about all they do. They say, okay, well, I do fitness, right? I do nutrition coaching. Okay, cool. What else are you offering? Right? If somebody's, your client and they're getting really good results, they probably want to go to the next level with you. And they probably want to, acquire that next product from you or an additional product from you. So like, are you streamlining, especially for a gym, are you streamlining your supplement sales? Are you streamlining your merchandise sales? Like, what are you selling in merch every month? Like, are you putting out a product every month? Are you running either a t-shirt, a water bottle, a hat, some kind of a merch product every month? Are you, working with a supplement supplier that makes things easy for you to send your clients and to a link so where they can go just direct purchase and have it drop shipped to them? So you're not doing inventory and placing bulk orders because like you're not a supplement company. And if you're carrying thousands of dollars worth of stock on your shelf and you're a small group gym that has less than 200 members, it's going to sit there and expire. So don't do that, right? Like get efficient systems in place today to start, expanding the revenue streams in your gym. Like you should have at least 6 revenue streams if you want to be able to pay yourself a good salary. And because a lot of your income is going to come, like obviously your core bulk of your income will come from your one offering, but that's not going to pay you a salary that will make it worth you giving the best years of your life to this business. You need to have additional revenue streams because that's what's going to allow you to pay for coaches and admin roles and, fill the gaps and be able to pay yourself. So figure out what else you can sell because I'll tell you, they want to buy it. They're going to want to buy your merch. They're going to want advice on supplements because they're already taking them and every month they have to go to GNC to buy them or whatever, right? So look at the different opportunities of revenue streams that you could immediately implement.
So Erin, what would be... We'll come back to Will in a second, but Erin, what would you... So we obviously have training. Let's go group training. Let's go semi-private training. Let's go supplements. Let's say merch. Mm-hmm. What would be some other ones that you would add into that someone could look at?
Yeah. Nutrition, right? Like, I mean, that's like the first, in terms of nutrition, that can be 2 or 3 revenue streams in itself. You can have a group program that you're running, right? That runs kind of all the time. And then you can run challenges that help funnel people into that group program. Mm-hmm. You can run a sort of a higher ticket that goes, hey, you're in our group program. You want more one-on-one? Cool. Now we can elevate you to the next program, which is coming with one-on-one sessions, not just group, but it's more one-on-one. So that's 3 right there. Right. Mm-hmm. You can do like other type of member fund challenges that people sort of pay to be a part of. These aren't going to be massive revenue streams, but they can definitely increase the number small, the small things add up, mm-hmm. but also look at your just core offering, right? Are you, when you're bringing somebody into your gym, are you doing an on-ramp? And I think, a lot of gyms think of on-ramps. They're like, oh, well, we got to do an on-ramp to teach people how to move. I'm sorry, but like if you're, and again, we don't just deal with CrossFit gyms, but we were a CrossFit gym. So like a lot of CrossFit gyms are like, oh, well, you got to do an on-ramp so that people can learn how to move safely. Do you really think you're teaching somebody safety on a clean or a snatch in 5 sessions? You're not. They're still going to ask you 3 months down the line, which is the clean and which is the snatch. Like they're going to be like, is this one? Is it this one? And you're like, no, like they're not learning anything. So your on-ramp should be an opportunity, not necessarily to teach them movements, but to help them sort of assimilate into your community and understand how your community flows and understand like the indoctrination to your community. Like that is what your on-ramp should be, is get them to adopt all of your systems and processes so that they can get assimilated in as quickly as possible to your community because you're going to keep them for longer, right? Mm-hmm. And in that case, like you should, if you're going to require an on-ramp, then you should require it from everybody, whether they have been doing your type of fitness for a decade or not. It doesn't matter. They're not here to learn a movement. They're learning here. And you're also weeding out people who aren't coachable, right? But anyways, that's just an additional offering that you can put on your menu of services. And again, it's like, cool, that's another revenue stream. So you've got your on-ramp, you've got your monthly group classes, you've got maybe like skill sessions, you've got seminars, certifications that you can run. I mean, it's endless in terms of like smaller additional revenue streams. I'll let Will kind of fill in the gap on the other side of things, because we kind of probably have two different sort of knowledge groups on this, if you will.
No, I mean, that pretty much, kind of goes hand in hand with what I would say is like, so there's four ways a business makes money. And this is agnostic to what kind of business it is, whether it's a gym or whatever. One being that you know how to get more clients, right? Getting more clients in the door, right? That's number one, paying clients in the door, customers, right? Number two is getting those customers to pay more, right? And that's where Erin talking about Ascension here is like fits right in, right? Build out like Ascension models in your gym, right? Now they kind of go in order, right? So before you put too much about Ascension, because you don't want to like get shiny object syndrome, you should, dial in client acquisition, right? So that way you have that coming in no matter what. Number two is, find more things to sell people, right? And usually things that they want that make sense, that help extend their average client lifespan and raise their average client value. Number three is get them to pay more often, right? So get them to buy more expensive things, but get them to buy more often, right? So that could be, there's a number of ways that's done. Could be changing the frequency of your payment plans. That's not even necessarily what it is. It could just be like offering them more things, right? Making more offers for more things in your gym, right? Like we used to at our gym, it wasn't about selling a t-shirt when we sold t-shirt orders, but we would do a t-shirt order every 2 months at our gym. And it was just to get people to spend money at our gym. We made hardly any money from it, right? We'd sell 40 t-shirts for $8 profit each, right? It wasn't worth the effort. But it was like, as long as they're spending money here and filling their wardrobe out with clothes that say Spark CrossFit on it, they're probably going to stay for a long ass time, right? If we got them to, and even if we didn't sell them things that were in our gym, even if we're like, hey, the Reebok store around the corner, if they would partner with us every now and then to send them clients, and they would like give us some free stuff, right? But it wasn't worth us like liquidating our relationship equity with our clients. It was bad, but we liked the Reebok products. So we would tell our clients, hey, Reebok's got a 30% off gift card for anybody who's a Spark member. Go see them, right? And like we didn't make any money directly on that, but we got them spending money in the direction that kept them clients with us longer, right? If they bought new CrossFit shoes, how often do people buy new shoes? Every couple of years, right? So they bought a new pair of shoes. That probably meant they were probably going to be a client for a couple of years at my gym, right? So just psychologically thinking about how can we get them to spend more money more often, mostly in our gym, but also outside, right? And then the fourth thing was get them to buy more things when they spend money, right? So like increase the average ticket order, right? So like a lot of that would have to do with like items in our pro shop or, supplements or, whatever the case may be, right? It's a little harder to do that with services because you're not, you try to build more recurring with services versus one-time things. So yeah, essentially all four of those things. So number one would be like, stabilize lead generation and client acquisition. And number two would be ascend, resell, and upsell. And then, number 3 and 4 kind of go hand in hand with those resell and upsell things, just in different ways, more volume, Yeah.
And honestly, like it could be so simple as like, cool. So you do a product spotlight this month where, for supplements, our product spotlight is, this multivitamin. And what you should also be taking if you're taking a multivitamin is probably vitamin D, or maybe it's a what's it called? Of course now the name is gone, but your gut, to help your gut. Probiotic, right? Or you're going to buy a probiotic. Hey, why don't you also buy a prebiotic? Those are kind of go hand in hand. So now instead of buying one product, they're buying 2 products, right? They're also going to be beneficial to them, right? Or it could be, hey, you buy Fit 8 every time you come in, why don't you buy 2 for the price of, a small discount? So you buy 2 at the same time and now you get a discount for purchasing 2, right? It can just be, as simple as like,
Yeah. Well, and Erin was really good. I would say Erin's really good at in her programs that she builds for the gyms, in the meal plans that she has structured. And this comes from how we used to do it at our gym, and it's how we show the gyms, how she shows gyms how to do this, is she would overlap those things, right? So we'd sell them into nutrition coaching as an upsell, that we're pulling that lever. But then when they would get their meal plans, it would say, every morning with breakfast, you're taking your multivitamin and your probiotic, right? And it was built into the meal plan. And then, naturally, Erin shows them how to like get, you don't have to go stock a bunch of inventory with this stuff. Erin shows you how to actually do that with direct drop shipping from companies like Thorne and other companies. So you don't even have to like touch the product and you get your margin, right? So it's like, there's smart ways to do this where all these things overlap and kind of create a machine, right? Like a cash turning machine.
But I will also say very quickly that the biggest part of doing this for most gym owners is getting out of their own way in their belief that they are somehow stealing money from their clients by doing this. I would say most of the gyms I work with are so shy to put out a merch order or a supplement order, or tell their members they should be taking supplements, because they feel somehow like they're like, going to make their clients go broke, or they're going to make they're just taking money from people and they feel icky about it. And it's like, your clients are purchasing supplements regardless of whether they buy them for you. They are from you. They are probably buying them from some 19-year-old kid at GNC who has no idea what he's talking about and recommended a crap product to them. So if you can actually help them procure a better product that probably costs less money and they're buying it from you, why would you not do that? Right? Like so I think some of it is just getting out of your own way of feeling like you're doing something wrong by trying to help your client acquire a product that's going to help benefit them in the long run, or even in the short term. Right. So I think a lot of it is getting over those thoughts. I think all nutrition coaches go through this majorly early on, of this feeling like they feel like they're, don't worry about your client's finances. That's their job to worry about their finances. Like, it's not your job. Your job is to help them get the result that they're trying to get as quickly and as sort of efficiently as possible. And like, you're doing them a disservice by not offering them something that would help them. I guess.
So, I mean, you guys are in the unique position of being able to work with hundreds of gyms in different markets, and probably different offerings. And 2 years ago, when we were in the throes of COVID, everyone was saying gyms are dying. Everyone's buying a Peloton and they're going to work out in their living room for the rest of their lives. Obviously, that's not the case. And I mean, so where do you see this industry going? And where do you see gym owners or coaches in general should really be thinking or setting themselves up in order to be successful in the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really loaded one. Yeah, I mean, so, with most of these gyms, you're not that subject to the market, to be honest with you, right? Like, we're talking about a business where, if you do a good job, you're going to cap it out anyways. So, and considering most, if you're talking about the average group fitness training gym, or even the average, coach or trainer that has a few clients, it's not hard, even in the worst of markets, to net the, say it's a CrossFit gym where 200 members is built, a really solid income and can pay everybody, right? Or a functional fitness gym. For most of them, if you're a couple hundred members, like you can make six figures and you can pay a couple other people pretty well to help you run that gym. Even in the worst of markets, it's not hard to find the 200 people that you need to be successful, right? So, as far as where the industry is going, I would say don't pay attention to the industry, because the industry as a whole is probably going to get hit here. You know what I mean? If fitness by and large is viewed as a discretionary spend, right? Like, it's still, for the most part, something that people with money do. If you look at poor people, they don't work out, right? So, people with money, most of the middle class, generally are going to pull back in a time of, economic unrest, right? And who knows, maybe the next year or two, this is just a bump on the radar, whatever. What I'm saying, it doesn't matter. I'm saying it doesn't matter. You can choose not to participate when everybody else is doing and just worry about yourself, right? Because at the end of the day, like, the systems upon which you build a good business and the data and information that goes along with it is pretty immutable, regardless of what's going on in the economy. You know what I mean? And in every market, even if you're in a town of 5,000 people, there's 200 people. In a market like that, you probably don't have many competitors, so it's relative, right? And you could find a couple hundred people. It's just getting in front of them. Most gyms in most markets right now, coming off of a really, really, really freaking good economy, most people in your market still don't know you exist. So why does the market or the economy have anything to do with it, right? Why does the industry have anything to do with it? It doesn't, because most people don't know you exist as it sits, right? So you can marginally increase the rate at which people know you exist, even in a down economy, because you're not doing it to begin with, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we kind of didn't answer your question. We kind of did.
Yeah. No, I like it. It's really just put your head down and work your community. Who cares what the world at large or nation at large is going on? Like,
yeah.
To me personally, so I mean, I'm obviously deep in the gym space with multiple gyms. Is like, people need a place to go. They need that community, and I like working out. But I like working out with people a whole lot more than I would like working out by myself in my basement. Like, yeah, it serves the purpose once or twice a week if I need to get a quick one in. But like, I like meeting my buddy at the gym and we can go get after a little bit around other people that are like-minded. And so I would say we're very similar in how we think about it. It's just like people are always going to need the community. And so if you build a really strong community and then you just like happen to do this fitness thing too, and then you just happen to do supplements and you help people live a better life, like you're probably going to be okay. You're going to have ups and downs like anybody,
Right.
but at the end of the day, you're still going to be kicking. So I think what
you're
you
spot
guys are
on,
doing
man.
is awesome.
Yeah, you
We
spot
could
on.
probably
That's and I'll add to that. Oh, can I add to that real quick before you?
Yeah.
before we run?
Yeah,
Okay.
so
So just in the talking about the ebb and flow of the industry and economies, because obviously our industry is part of the greater economy and how it's affected. When times do get tough, people tend to want to band back together. If you look at it, like I would say, what was responsible for what probably was part of the initial craze of group fitness industry wide was CrossFit. They were the kind of the first one to kind of boom, and then after that came every other kind of group fitness, right? And it became a something that the millennial generation really got behind, and that's because and that all happened during a recession, right? Like CrossFit was launched in 2005, grew its fastest from 2008 to 2012, which was the depths of the recession, right? The recession, and that's because hard times bring people closer together, right? And a couple $100 here or there to pay to be closer to people and feel, get through this time together, doing something constructive for your body, is a really, it's a really good sell, right? It's a really good way to, help people through that. So, whatever the industry does, whatever the economy does, at the end of the day, what you're saying is spot on, man. That build a community first, build, a refuge and a haven in your local city or community, and promote the heck out of it, because like what you sell helps people, right? They're gonna spend the money either way, right? They're gonna medicate with alcohol on the weekends to cover it up, or they're gonna go manifest that energy physically at your gym and get fitter, right?
Right. I always tell my coaches, we're not selling crack to kids. Like you're helping people become more successful human beings, and so we need to promote it. So
and like that's also just to finalize, like that is also, I know a lot of nutrition coaches use Coach Catalyst, right? And like this does not defer, right? When you're coaching nutrition, like think about how you can do this as a community. You're going to have clients stick around a whole lot longer if they feel like they're part of a community. Most nutrition coaches struggle because they go at this from a one-on-one perspective. And it's like, yeah, you're going to struggle in a recession if you're going one-to-one, but if you're creating community, like this is where it's at. So I'll just say for all the nutrition coaches listening, don't sleep on that.
I love it. I've got a couple rapid fire questions just because they're fun and I want to hear your answers, even though we've been doing this for a while, and I appreciate you guys taking some time out of your day. Yeah. So, all right, we'll go Erin first and then Will with the rapid fire questions. So, taco, burrito, or quesadilla?
Taco all day.
Burrito.
The variations, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Burrito.
So you guys are gonna learn. You guys are gonna learn a little bit about each other right now. I like it.
I'm just hungry. I just want as much food as possible, so I'm probably answering wrong. I just want a burrito right now.
Right. Maximum calorie intake.
That's right.
All right, Erin. If you could eat at one restaurant for the rest of your life, only one, what restaurant do you choose?
It's got to be Culinary Dropout, because they have a little bit of everything in terms of style of food, whether they have healthier stuff and more savory stuff. So.
Man, it's good. That's probably we go to quite a bit. They have Culinary Dropouts around the country. Do people know what that is?
A couple places. Fox Restaurants is like expanded to some other states, but mostly like your kind of A-tier markets.
Yeah, I would say it's like the kitschier, slightly upscale, trendy, but kind of somewhat normal food. It's not a steakhouse. They'll have like stuff like steak, like kind of steaks on their menu, but they also have like some sushi, and they've got like, it's like that new American, like kitschy style stuff. Yeah, so it's a little bit of everything. They got really healthy stuff. And then like pretzels and cheese, like beer cheese, like they have a little bit of everything. So I feel like if it's going to be one place, it's got to be that.
I like it. Well, are you joining Erin, or are you going somewhere else?
I think so. Yeah, I think, man, I mean, pizza swims in my blood, so it's kind of hard to not say like a pizza joint, but Culinary Dropout's pretty good because I could probably order almost anything on their menu depending on how I'm feeling.
They probably have pizza.
They might even have pizza. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, so let's stick with that for now.
Okay. All right. Next one. Will, you get to think a little bit on this. So Erin, you're first. Something you've purchased recently for, let's call it $100 or less, that you feel like provides disproportionate value to what you gave for it? And if you don't have one, and maybe Will has one right now, we can let Will go and then we can come back to it. So
Can you think of anything, Will?
I buy a lot of stuff like that. Actually, it's kind of like that's the old Tim Ferriss question, isn't it?
Yep,
Didn't he?
yep.
Yeah, I love that
Uh-huh.
one. I'm gonna steal that for my podcast too. Yeah, I'm looking at my Amazon list right now as it sits. I mean,
okay, I'll say this is probably not like probably not a great one, but that's okay. I would say for myself, I am a very big reader, but I'm not. I'll read a self-development book here and there, but my favorite, I'm a big fiction reader. So I feel like for me, it's like reading is, it's my time to like kind of go into myself and enjoy like, so I'd say, I think I would just say books, but that's only because I think it disproportionately allows me to disconnect and sort of, I don't watch any TV whatsoever at all. So for me, like that's my self-care time.
That's a good one though, because for what's a book cost? $15 to $20, and you're really getting someone's life work. So even less, right? But you're getting like someone that's lived and done something for, let's say, 25 years, and they're condensing it into 150 pages, like all of that wisdom for $20. Like,
yeah, mostly read fiction, so it's probably not.
You just want to just the fantasy world. Go into your fantasy world.
High fantasy, yeah. But for me, it's the return I get on that is that self-care, right? I mean, with two kids like talking at me and jumping on me all day, I'm like to be able to just kind of like sit alone in the peace and quiet and just like kind of calm it down. Like for me, that I would say is disproportionate value to what it costs.
I like it. Well, what do you got?
Yeah, I was gonna say books as well, but I was looking for something more practical because people like to go buy stuff, right? Plus you can put a link down and below your podcast and get affiliate fees on that if you want. So
right, absolutely.
That's what Tim Ferriss used to do. He used to be like, "What's your thing?" And then he'd put the links below, and he'd make money on that thing. Yeah, definitely books. I'm always reading a different book. Right? I mean, but I mean, as far as practical things, I recently we went to Barcelona and I needed a backpack, and I went to like the Toomey store to go buy like they have like these $1,000 backpacks for anybody's ever been there. Cause I'm thinking like, oh, they have the best luggage, right? I get there and I see a bag. I'm like, this is the sickest bag like ever. It's so cool. And like, but it's not under $100. Obviously I didn't buy it. Like I was like, it was like $1,000. And like, even though like we're doing well enough where that's not a big deal, I don't like the word cheap, but I'm very value driven. I'm very value driven. Like it has to have, to me, it felt like I was getting what I was paying for sure. The quality was there, but it didn't feel like an outsized return of value to the amount I was paying. So I didn't buy it. I was like, I'm going to go look on Amazon and see if I can find like the same bag, like knockoff, like China version. Right. And I kind of found it. And so I bought this backpack and it has all these zippers. And when I went to Barcelona, it was awesome because I had like an umbrella. It was very, from a practical standpoint, it was really, really good. It was like $60. So my thriftiness paid off, and then I got the same result for a significantly less money, and the return was definitely there. It was awesome. So
I love it. All right, last one, and this one's a little kooky. If you were reincarnated as an animal based on your personality, what animal do you come back as? Erin, you look like you have. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Only because like it's got to be my spirit animal of some sort. It has to be leopard for sure. Because my daughter says my favorite color is leopard. If you ask her what my favorite color is, she'll say it's leopard. Because I generally wear like black, white, tan, and then like leopard, like a leopard print shoes or like some like a leopard. But like literally, if everything in my life is some form of leopard. So I got to say that I have to say a leopard just because I feel, and it hasn't disappeared. This has been like years going. It's not a fad. It's a real thing. Even like tortoiseshell kind of is like a little bit like leopard. And so I go with the tortoiseshell because it's like almost a leopard look, right? So yeah, leopard.
I like it. Well,
or a sloth because I'm the slowest runner you'll ever meet. So.
All right. Well, what do you got?
Yep. We've had these conversations before, and I always struggle with it because I get too granular and like the personality stuff, right? I was like, maybe I'm a shark, right? Because everybody wants to be a shark, and like sharks are like always be closing. I'm a shark, right? But I'm actually not a shark because I'm like the shark generally is kind of more like someone who's not like doesn't have I would say, as much of a consciousness, because
Yep.
sharks will eat you and not give a crap if you're a nice person, right? Like,
Yep.
so I wouldn't say I'm a shark because like I sell for good, right? So if I help you acquire something that I sell, it's like, because generally I think it does well for you. We have plenty of people we tell, like, hey, this is not a fit for you. Like, based on where you're at, you should probably go talk to this person, right? So like, Erin, you've had these conversations. In the past, I know it's been a while, but like, what did we kind of come up with? I mean, I know that I like the rhino a lot. Actually, there's a rhino right back here.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, rhinos, because they just always keep charging, right?
Yep.
Like,
rhinos don't know how to go backward, I think, is the thing. Like, they don't know how to go backward. They only know how to go forward, I think. Maybe, I don't know if that's real or not, but that's what they say.
It sounds good. I mean, I like
yeah,
it. It sounds good.
Yeah, I choose to believe it, you know?
Uh-huh. I like it.
I think that, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't know what else to say other than maybe a lion, because you protect your pride, I guess.
That's a
like
good
you're like the people around you. You're very you like to care for the people around you, you know, to the best of yours and their ability. So
yeah.
But.
Yeah, and we'll definitely rip some heads off on you too.
I love it. Well, yeah. I could talk to you guys all day, but I want to make sure that you can have a life. So, if people want to find out a little bit more about what you guys have going on, where about in the social media world or the interweb should they go?
Yeah. So, if you want to connect with us, I think a lot of the last couple of years of me kind of putting out content has been actually mostly on Facebook. I haven't yet jumped over to, got a little bit on Instagram, but it's really not there. My Instagram is Maverick Will. If on Facebook, if you can find me personally, you're more than welcome to just send me a friend request and just be friends. And I have some Facebook groups I can let you in where I share kind of more of what we do. Erin's also involved in that. Definitely planning on getting, we have a podcast currently, but it's kind of season 1 of it, I guess you could say, is over, and we're getting ready to kind of do like a season 2 of it. That's on Apple. It's called Gym Hacker Radio Podcast. So you can go back and watch some of those. Some of those are kind of from the past couple of years. We need to get some new stuff up. And then YouTube, we're not really on yet, but that's also something that'll kind of come hand in hand with the podcast. So kind of stay tuned for that stuff. Erin can tell you how to find her.
Oh, and to finish his sentence, Big Little Gyms is our business. So biglittlegyms.com. If you wanted to like drop your actual website. And then also Atomic Nutrition. Atomic Nutrition is my business, which I basically help nutrition coaches and gyms build nutrition systems within their gym or within their clientele. And my website is getatomic.coaching.com. And Atomic Nutrition is my Facebook page, which you can find me on there as well.
Cool. We'll make sure we have all that in the show notes too. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Coach Catalyst podcast. If you are a coach looking to do more for your clients than just workouts, give Coach Catalyst a test drive. Try it for 14 days. Jump on call with your personal strategy coach, Ashley, and see how easy technology can be, all for free. Tell them Trevor sent you. Until next time, keep changing lives.